Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Fiend Zone Video Behind the Counter presented by Behind the Fiends. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Frank Farel. If you don't recognize the name, you should. He was responsible for Spookies. To me, one of the greatest movies in terms of practical effects ever made. To me, still holds up today. He also played a dismembered derelict in Street Trash, which means he put his willy somewhere that he probably shouldn't have, and it got whacked off. Um, he's had acting credits: Street Trash, Igor and the Lunatics, Dawn of the Dead. He was a zombie sprayed by seltzer water, which he was uncredited for. He's been a producer: Hell of the Screaming Undead, Street Trash, and Spookies, and is the writer for the screenplay of Spookies, which originally was called Twisted Souls. But without any further ado, I will bring in the man himself, Mr. Frank Farel.
Hey there.
How you doing, Mr. Farel?
Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir, and I do appreciate you coming on our show. It's a true honor and a true pleasure.
It's always an honor when someone wants me on their show. It's as you might be somewhat aware, it's like my career suddenly had this major upswing in the past couple of years since my film Spookies was finally put out in a decent video form, which was the 2-disc Blu-ray that came out about 2 years ago. And that suddenly everybody who had never seen Spookies has seen Spookies. And even those who had seen it were so used to seeing it in a poor VHS version that everyone was pretty thrilled about it. And I've just been, all I can tell you, I've been having a romance with the fans just because they've been so kind and generous. And it really matters a lot to me.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I to be fair, I didn't get to see it back in the day, and I'm sure a lot of people have said that.
Not everybody did. It played, the grindhouse circuit around the country, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there had to be under 10 35 millimeter copies of it made, so it would hit New York City or a major city or drive-ins down south and hit 10 theaters or so, and then be gone to some other part of the country.
But the practical effects you all pulled off in that are just spectacular. I know you all had a limited budget, and to do what you did, especially I think the woman transforming into the spider, just that alone to me was that still holds up today.
Yeah, we were astonishingly lucky in terms of the people we were able to work with. Let's see. I'll be a little self-congratulatory too, in that I think we had really good judgment and could really see talent and wanted to encourage talent and work with talent.
Mm-hmm.
So that we wound up with several people who have gone on to become major effects players in the business for many years at this point. And and I've been in touch with a lot of them recently. They still have fond memories of Spookies, and it's one of the pictures, if not the picture, that really kicked off their careers.
And one nugget of knowledge I came across while I was doing my research prior to coming on with you was your film was actually Sony Pictures' very first film.
It was the first theatrical release from Sony, who later bought Columbia Pictures and became a major part of the movie industry. Originally, they were just electronics.
Mm-hmm.
They, in, what was it, 86, I guess was the year, formed the Sony Video Company, which was designed to just basically to distribute VHS around the country. And they also wanted to get into theatrical, and they'd already, their VHS, list was pretty weak. It was mostly, older, cheaper pictures, nothing really that prestigious or anything, considering how big a company they were. But somehow they decided Spookies was going to be their premier theatrical release, and they bought video and theatrical rights and got it into theaters at that time, which was still at that time it wasn't so hard to get into theaters, but the fact is that a lot of films like that already, at that time the video market had become really huge, and a lot of movies were being made and going straight to video still. They found it, I guess, commercial enough. They put it out there. They told me they made a profit theatrically, and I know they made a good profit on VHS later on. The problem was that myself and my partners who made Twisted Souls, the original movie
Mhm.
that was retitled Spookies. It took us forever to feel any degree of comfort with the movie, because we felt like our movie was taken apart and thrown back together in an entirely different fashion. New scenes were shot. I mean, I imagine at least some of this, and it was not a movie that we could say, "Oh yeah, here's our movie, aren't we great?" Because we just felt so at odds with it, and it was like, I would say it was more of a problem at that point in our careers than anything else. We could not. It's not like the hope was that we'd make Spookies and then we'd say, "All right, we got a finished film. It's relatively inexpensive. It made money," and those factors were still true. But the film itself made it look like we were far less competent, I think, than we were.
So what was I mean, why the name change and all that? Was it just the studio didn't have confidence
We
in
had
that?
a backer who was very possessive and paranoid and angry at the world. Apparently, he started the company called Vipco in the UK. That's was the first big
Mm.
distributor on video of horror movies, and he's the one who sort of got known as the king of the video nasties, meaning that he almost wound up in jail on a few occasions for distributing movies just because they were bloody, essentially. And he got he got bigger and bigger with that. He wanted to go on. He wanted to go into production. He was looking for something to invest in. Came over here to the U.S. Myself, my two partners, Brendan Faulkner, Thomas Doran, had been working together for a few years, trying to get a project out there. We had started a few things, done, promos that we hoped would turn into films that didn't. And at that time, we had just done a promo for a film called Hellspawn, and Mr. Michael Lee, who's the head of Vipco, came. Oh, we were introduced to him, and he was looking for some kind of a production team that would be able to make him a profitable, low budget horror movie. And somehow we convinced him. I don't know how we did it at this point, because it was one of the hardest things I can ever remember accomplishing, because he was so utterly skeptical and doubtful, and was convinced absolutely everyone was looking to lie to him or cheat him all the time. And so we just, we really wanted this, and we kept at it, and eventually we were able to come to terms. And but we also had to. I mean, he didn't want the thing we had already started making. He had an idea. He just wanted to rip off the Evil Dead, essentially. You know,
Basically this on my shirt.
yeah, he said, I want a bunch of teenagers in a haunted house.
That was the question I was getting ready to ask. How come he never? Because from what I read, he didn't have much faith in the actual screenplay that you had originally written, and he wanted you to change it around for make it like an Evil Dead clone.
No, no, no. I mean, the other film, the other screenplay was another film. That was a project that we had,
Oh, okay.
Hellspawn. It was a better screenplay, quite frankly. It was better on every level, because we had actually given it thought. We liked it. It had been rewritten at least once. Spookies was just to get to a first draft was a major ordeal, just because we had to every week. We'd write some. First we'd write a treatment, and we'd have to read that to him, and then after we'd read every paragraph, we would have to sit there and explain in detail what everything meant and what it was going to be, and how what it would look like. uh, he eventually he got comfortable enough. He paid us to write a screenplay, and again, but it was really a matter of giving him what he wanted, not what we necessarily wanted. And we pretty much decided early on that the way we could come out on top was to bring in some of the effects people that we had already started working with, and just make this a real, a monster marathon, to like get as many like weird, not the typical things that everybody had seen plenty of times before, but to really, sort of surprise people with something a little different. And that was it. That was our central intention, plus to make it look decent for the money it was being made for, give it, atmosphere, etc. But it was a very trying situation, because there was a pressure from him that is not typical. I mean, you frequently get money people who are very, on top of things, and very demanding. But because he understood so little about the process and was so unwilling to trust other people, it just, it became, we were under the gun the entire time. And what happened in post-production after we had shot the film, cut it together, had a very rough cut of the film. We got into a fight, an argument in the cutting room, and couldn't resolve it, and wound up suing him before he sued us. And yeah, no, because we had my company at the time still had outstanding expenses that he was supposed to be paying for. Um, so his long-term solution was he had the film. The only thing that it needed were some optical effects for the climactic scenes, which one of our crew members was going to be doing. And unfortunately, when he realized that in order to do the same thing with like a studio or somebody else would cost him quite a bit more money, he just didn't want to do that. So he brought someone in who had been a former, well, actually, probably I think she was still at the time a current porn director and actress, actually. And she, well, yes. No,
Just
the name on the film is Eugenie Joseph, and she was, gosh, and I can never remember her porn name.
now you
But
got me wanting to go to Google and be like Eugenie Joseph, aka.
no, she was like a known porn performer at the time. Maybe it'll come back to me in a moment here. Um, she, I don't know whether she just talked her way in or got him, wrapped around her finger somehow or whatever. But he somehow got convinced that like he should scrap more than half the film and she should shoot entirely new scenes to make it good. And
Now,
so
when
that's,
you all, oh, I'm sorry, didn't
oh,
mean to cut you
no,
off.
so I'm not saying that's where you get what is really the framing story that's wrapped around. Our movie was about a bunch of people coming to the house. The other movie was the sorcerer Creon controlling the monsters that later attack them, which was all just added out of nowhere.
Yeah, because when you all originally did the movie Twisted Souls, it was supposed to be straight up horror movie, correct? And then he
It was. I
came
mean,
in.
it was, I mean, so it was fun. I mean, it was intended to have some laughs and everything else. But the movie that resulted, I've felt then, and I guess I still feel that it's far more ridiculous than the movie we intended to make. And what's frustrating about the film Spookies, I think more than anything, which is why some people outright hate it and are very hostile towards it, is that because it's constantly cutting back between two different stories that really have nothing to do with each other, that there's a sense of frustration that builds. It's like you start to follow something for 5 minutes and then boom, oh, you're into this other thing, and it's like, what about? Then you go with that for the next 10 minutes, and then boom, oh, you're somewhere, you're back with the other people, but you don't know what you're in the middle of now. I think it's one of these films that is sort of you have a subliminal reaction to it where your mind says, well, wait a minute, that just doesn't make any sense, even though you go with it.
It's like a movie that's basically got ADHD kind of. It's just all over the place.
It really does. It really does. And a lot of it was cut together in ways just to be able to insert the new director's footage. That was like the only reason that some shots are even in the film at this point. So, I mean, for years, it was like, the curse of Spookies. It was not a movie that we could be proud of. It was not a movie that we could really claim to be truly our own. But over the years, I mean, I realized there were people who liked it. People did really seem to notice the quality of the practical effects work. And myself and my partner Thomas Doran, who passed away just a few years ago, made an effort for a number of years to find out who the current rights holders were. And eventually we traced it back to we had a good reason to believe that our backer who financed the movie had sold all rights off and that it was in other hands. But eventually we came right back to him and confronted with him. He was not about to give us the rights to our own movie after all these years. So fortunately, Vinegar Syndrome, located in Connecticut, got a hold of it,
Mhm.
bought the film outright, now owns world rights to Spookies, restored it beautifully. It looks like it was made yesterday. I mean, it looks so far cleaner, brighter, more detailed than it did in a theater. And it's been all over the place since then. I mean, and when I say that, I mean it's been like fans have rediscovered it. There's been lots and lots of excitement about that. It was in film festivals in various parts of the world, Australia, another one in Spain about a year or so ago. Just in retrospectives, and it's been suddenly given credibility that it just never ever had any chance or hope of having before. Um, part of it was that it was difficult to see, but the fact it was interesting because several years before Vinegar Syndrome got a hold of it, it was playing at the Alamo Draft House, which are various repertory theaters around the country, and they apparently got access to a few prints, and they were running it here and there. And it took me actually a few years to find out about this or even get to one of these screenings. And that was the first time I saw it on a screen with an audience that was really enjoying it, and that was such an eye-opening thing to deal with after feeling like this is just a failure and I have to just be content with it being a failure.
Yeah, and
um
Alamo Drafthouse is kind of a big deal when you look at an old movie like that, especially a low budget film to be able to be shown there. I mean,
no, they make those kind of opportunities happen for a lot of older and small films, etc., because they have some respect for film and filmmakers. But the fact is that the film ultimately works with an audience. It works maybe differently than we intended it to in the beginning. It works. Part of it is just that, like, it's like every scene is like a non sequitur. It's like here's a scene and it doesn't make sense. Here's a scene and this one doesn't make sense either. And now there's two scenes and neither of them make sense. That's really what it comes down to. It's and people have somehow been, I guess, sort of very entertained, and they find that to be a satisfactory way for this kind of a movie to be. And look, I understand that there are plenty of other people's movies. I mean, I think specifically of a lot of like Italian horror movies from the '80s, where like nothing makes a damn bit of sense. There's like 5 plots going on, nothing connects. Scenes pop up with characters you've never seen before, and then suddenly you're expected to follow them, and that's how Spookies works.
yeah, I think what you're probably talking about, what, like the I think it's Lucio Fulci's zombie movies. I
Well,
mean, they
yeah,
were
I can think of. I mean, I'm a big fan of that genre and films from that time. But I mean, that was just very typical because some of the producers were so cheap jack that they would just like, they'd say, "Oh, well, we'll buy up this guy's movie and he's got 20 minutes shot. Then we'll get this piece over here that we got from another movie, and then we got 30 minutes there, and then we'll build a plot around." And that's sort of how Spookies was made.
and see, a lot of people don't understand that you guys that pioneered basically the low budget indie film, the hoops and just the amount of shit you had to go through just to make your movie, where now with the internet it's a little bit, it's substantially easier to get
It's
funding or
substantially easier. It's also far more competitive than ever. I mean, it was always competitive, but now you can just, if you have a phone, you can technically make a film. Uh,
Mhm.
there's but it comes back to like, it's sort of like everybody deciding that they want to be a writer or something. It's like, yeah, some people are going to be okay, and some people are going to be amazing. And all this has done is really given it that kind of an equal footing that it the film and video field lacked for a good long time. You can now, especially if you're skilled, what you're doing, and especially if you're even someone who is a professional, you can take very simple equipment. In fact, I see a fair number of like recent direct to video movies, mostly horror, and they visually look like, some of them look amazing, some of them look like they were shot by children. uh it's like, I don't even know how people can, on my phone, if I just walked outside and turned on my phone, I can get an image that I'll be amazed to watch on a large screen a few minutes later. It's hard to get a really bad image.
I think, I don't know, it was just, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Velocipaster. It's about a preacher
No, but
that,
I have, my friends were telling me about it.
me and Luke, he's also one of my other co-hosts on here. We watched that, and he's a harder critic than I am. I'm like, this is so fucking bad that I actually like this shit.
Mhm.
And he was like, this is trash, this is garbage. And I'm like, he's like, the big payoff at the end, what the hell? He's like, that's that one of those inflatable Raptor suits that you see running around at basketball games. And I'm like, yes, but that's the beauty of it. This guy shot this movie. I think when I looked it up, I think he shot it off of like $2,000 and just his friends.
Right.
So I mean, it was like one of those Halloween
Right.
inflatable
I mean,
dinosaur costumes.
the only qualifier a film needs is that somebody wanted to put it into distribution.
and it became a cult hit. I mean, it's on Amazon Prime and all that, for God's sake. I mean,
Well, see, that's the thing now. I mean, it's a lot easier to make films. They're cheaper, etc. There's lots more outlets. There's so many places. If you made a micro budget film, you just get it out there, and people will see it. It's harder than ever to probably make money, though. And
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I hear very little positive about distributors in general. Like most people, most filmmakers I know, most of the people I read stuff about, it's just it's there's no money coming in most cases. Maybe if you're dealing with a big enough company, where it's reputable enough and your film is visible enough, yeah. But if you're somebody who just made like a $10,000 film and now you're just trying to see your $10,000 back, that may never happen, even though your distributor will be doing pretty well with it.
yeah. I mean, some of my closest friends are actually indie film directors, and I could tell people out there that might have this illusion that they're going to be filthy rich. Every one of them are taking losses on this, big losses, and they're doing it for the fact that they just wanted to do something and wanted to create
Right,
something.
and that's fine. It's fine to do that, and to tell the truth, it's sort of like, even back in the days when it was theatrical. You'd make a film, and most films were a risk then. Most films are a risk now. The fact is, in the 70s and 80s especially, it's like you could, if you just had a horror film that you could put on a screen, you could make money.
Yeah,
It
like
was, everybody was certain to see a profit. It seemed at that time, your film had to be exceptionally bad to not see a profit, and all you needed was a good ad campaign, really.
I mean, hell, when you look at oh, God, I lost my the movie I was thinking of, but come on, John, you ain't getting Alzheimer's already, are you? Anyway, um, it'll come back to me in a minute, but what was the reason why Spookies took so long to find its way to DVD, Blu-ray, and was it because of that distributor?
Well, not because, well, yes, because of Vipco in the United Kingdom. I think it had a lot to do at the time with his personal life, meaning he had a whole library of films. He had put them out numerous times on VHS, and he had put them out numerous times on DVD, including Spookies. Right, and these were like, really just down and dirty transfers. The video transfer of Spookies from England is really not very good. Um, but he would release them, and then a few years later release it again under another company name, and then a few years later do the same thing again. So he was doing this over a number of years. And then, as far as I can figure, I haven't been able to actually confirm this. I think he must have gone bankrupt at some point, because he seemed to sell his library off to another company that, as far as I could figure, he was not connected to anymore. But the truth is that I then learned he was in England. He was actually living in a nursing home, and was not necessarily in the best of mental health. And so, I mean, there were guys who went over and interviewed him. In fact, on our Blu-ray, there's a whole documentary of just about Vipco, and a lot of it is interviewing him about his past, etc. But he, I mean, he didn't do anything with the movies for many years, and I can't understand why. From the time that we worked with him, he seemed to be, even though he was making money hand over fist in England on horror films, he didn't like movies that much to begin with. He didn't like horror movies. He looked down on the people who were his customers, and he really, if you look at any of the advertising and the boxes from the videos of that at that time from his company, I mean, it's all like lowest common denominator marketing. There was no awareness of a fan market, of a serious market of people who were serious film buffs who wanted to know more or get movies that they couldn't otherwise get. So I think he could have, I think, easily made like several times the money he made back in the 80s.
Yeah, I saw some of that box art because I went searching for Spookies on eBay, and I came across one of the old original VHS tapes, and it was just a screenshot on just a plain box. It was
Yeah,
basically,
it was as simple and cheap as he could make it. He didn't want to have to spend money. He didn't think it mattered in the least. Um, that, which is odd, because the general thing with, especially with horror movies, is the poster is going to sell the movie.
yeah. I know that's how all my buddies are basically getting their campaigns funded, is
I mean,
through their
but
posters.
somehow, all through the time since we made Spookies back in the 80s, It never came out in the USA on VHS again. It never came out when DVDs started up. It never had a DVD release. It never got out on cable or anywhere again. I mean, it was basically a very difficult to see film until YouTube suddenly began not hosting it, but people would post it, and it was a way to see at least the VHS version. And however, there was, as I said, there was an interest, there was an outcry. People did want to see a decent version of the film. A lot of people regarded it very fondly. I've been told by a number of people that it's, in certain ways, it's like the quintessential 80s horror movie, just because it's got all these puppet and practical effects that became very popular, especially starting in the early 80s. And and it's low budget, but it's got a lot of spirit. It's got good and bad aspects, and entertains. And I feel at this point somewhat vindicated, because it means a lot to me when people can say that they enjoyed something. And I've had quite a number of people tell me that my work on this and on Street Trash, which I was also involved with, that those films were extremely influential on them in terms of their taste and their love of movies and their desire to get into film themselves in many cases.
Yeah, my son, he's 20 years old. I have two kids. One's going to be 22. He's not much of a movie guy, but my youngest kid, he loves old movies. He's like his old man. He loves old movies. And I introduced him to that movie this weekend on YouTube. It was a bad copy that somebody put on YouTube. And he's seen some where he's looked at me like, Dad, that was 2 hours of my day I'll never get back, just things like that. But he got done with it and he was like, when did they make this? I was like, in the 80s. He goes, that looks like if you cleaned it up, it could have been made today.
Well, to tell the truth, that's how the Blu-ray looks. I mean, it looks so sharp, so clean. The color is just rushing out at you. Very different. Also, I mean, even at that time, when you got a film in 35 millimeter into a theater, you did not have the ability to fine tune the contrast and the color the way that you do now with video.
Yeah, because he was like watching it, and he was. There was the one scene with I think the farting zombies or whatever, and he just laughed out loud at that. He thought that was the greatest
I'm
thing
not
ever.
responsible. I'm not responsible.
But and then when the guy got ate by the spider and how the body just shriveled up to nothing, and he's like, me and him both were like, man, this is one of those movies you could sit down with a big old bucket of popcorn and know you got your damn money's worth out of it.
Right. It's so interesting because I always felt like, because it had been so changed, that I couldn't like ask anybody I knew to watch it without feeling like they were being cheated somehow or something. It took a long time, but the film now has credibility. It's gotten attention from people that I never thought it would. Joe Bob Briggs just did it on the last drive-in like a few months ago. He did it at my request. I wrote him a letter and I said, "Hey, my movie just came out on Blu-ray. I think you should get it on your show." And he did pretty quickly. I was very impressed, and I sort of feel that the film has become an accepted 80s horror standard at this point in just a couple of years.
Well, we can say thank God for Joe Bob, to be truthfully honest, because he's that one that's still kind of the torchbearer for those old films. Like, hey, look at this right here. You will like it. Just watch it. And I mean, he did it with Street Trash. He had Street Trash on
Right.
the
Well,
last.
I mean, to tell the truth, I haven't met Joe Bob, but I have to thank him at some point, because he not only did he respond directly to when I said get Spookies on your show, but he had previously done Street Trash, had done an entire segment talking about my scene in Street Trash.
Yeah.
And this is so bizarre. I don't understand why. Someone is going to have to explain. In fact, I should try and get a hold of him, because I know some of the people who do his show. But Street Trash and Spookies, as far as I know, are the only movies that have had a special VHS last drive-in release.
Yep.
Why?
Maybe it's one of his favorites. I mean,
yes, but that's like, I feel like there's something I need to know.
And it sold out, because I remember when he did that campaign. I mean, it was like in no time. It was like just as soon as he put it on the internet, it was gone. I mean, it was that quick. And yeah, when you're seeing people that's never seen Street Trash, Frank Scene, he kind of puts his willy into a kind of a glory hole, and it gets cut off. And I think Felisa Rose, who does this thing on his last drive-ins called the Mangled Dick Expert, and I
Yes,
think that's the
yes, yeah.
segment you're talking about. And Felisa Rose was just
And I
going on.
right, and I realize that there's a T-shirt out there for that you can get. So I'm gonna probably have to get myself one. But that it's interesting because that's a scene that at the time we did it, that was like pretty cutting edge in terms of like no one had actually seen. Maybe they'd seen a castration scene, but they had never seen one that was this explicit and it was played for laughs. And I think we weren't 100% sure how well it would work, but it worked. It worked for the audience, and so that's really what mattered. But it has left me with an interesting legacy. It's like something else I can brag about.
Here's something I want to know: what became of the actual penis on set after your scene? Did they use?
There were several of them. Every member of the crew had one. Um, it was there was one that was supposed to be quote life size, which was actually like pretty big, And then there was another one that was there were two of them that were for flying through the air in slow motion close-ups. So there was one that was maybe about like this big, and then there was like and they were made by Mike Lackey, who plays Fred, the older brother in Street Trash.
Mhm.
Right. And I remember coming because I was the film's production manager, and I'm in my office there, and he comes and he goes, "Well," he's got these two things in his hand. He goes, "Here's the pecker, and here's the packer."
And we all can guess what the packer was. It's
Yeah,
the pretty, yeah.
And then a few days after we shot the scene, I came back. I came into my office, and the smaller one had been glued erect on my dial phone, so that when I dialed
Jeez.
the phone, it spun around.
So you're sitting here trying to do these serious calls
Right.
to people, and there's this packer just on your phone,
Yes.
just sitting.
Yeah. That's fine.
See, that's what I wanted to know. How did it end up becoming like, gags on set where they would just
Well,
hide it on
there's always gags and people like fooling around and trying to make everybody laugh on set. I mean, because that's you. Part of the wonderful thing about doing a movie is it's because it's this group effort. There's like just a lot that goes into it socially. You form relationships with people. You help people. They help you. And eventually, you get a lot of entertainment out of just being involved in any feature film, I think. And it's different, I think, on a feature film than something short like a commercial or something where you're there for maybe a day or two. When you're working on something for a few weeks or months, you develop a whole a set of relationships that in many cases remain with you for the rest of your life.
Well, now that we're talking about Street Trash, how did you become involved with that project?
I
Was it?
had I had been a student of Roy Frumkes, who taught at the School of Visual Arts in New York City and at the State University of New York in Purchase, upstate New York. And I had met him, and he, like myself, he was like an all kinds of movie lover, and really like loved everything and was very knowledgeable. And so we had a lot in common. He was also I used to collect 16 millimeter. Roy was a 16 millimeter collector, and so there was a natural sort of affinity for the same things. We wanted to make films. We originally started making a feature film that never got completed, which was called Tales That Will Tear Your Heart Out. It was an anthology horror movie,
Ooh.
and it was intended. What he wanted to do was he knew a number of professionals who were willing to come in and be part of it. So he wanted stories directed by name directors, or at least people with professional experience, and then others by students who were getting a first shot. Now, two of the people that that were getting their first shot were myself and Brendan Faulkner, who became later the co-director of Spookies. So, but unfortunately, the film itself, we shot bits and pieces of it. We never really completed it. And he had brought in like name professionals. I mean, like Wes Craven directed an episode. Before like say The Hills Have Eyes, before his career really took off into the mainstream the way it did. He developed a reputation with stuff like Last House on the Left, but he wasn't the kind of director that he became. And so I mean, he did that. We had other people's performers and behind the cameras people, and the film unfortunately just never got finished. There's been talk in recent years of somehow finding a way to just put it out there because fans are very curious about it.
That's what I was getting ready to ask.
There are some shots. There's some outtakes from it that are on the film. Dr. Butcher, MD, originally which in Italy and in Europe was Zombie Holocaust, right? Was released as Dr. Butcher here, and they needed they needed something to put under a new title sequence when they changed the title. So they purchased, and this was at the time, this was without the knowledge of myself and Brendan, but our scenes were purchased to use under the titles for Dr. Butcher MD, which was kind of annoying at the time, and also kind of cool to be able to say, well, I finally got my retroactive theatrical feature film debut from something I shot when I was 19.
So there is some possible curiosity about you maybe revisiting that and completing it finally?
People ask about it like all the time, right? The footage is still in existence. It can't, there's nothing it can't be put together into an actual film. It would be more interesting probably to put together a documentary about it, just because of some of the people involved who later, went on to other things. But I mean, I think for me that was a great experience. It really made me feel like I had some idea maybe what I was doing. And I think if we had finished that film at the time, that we would have it would have been almost legendary, because there was no other film in that era that I'm aware of that was coming out of a college film class.
Yeah, and I love horror anthologies. I mean, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
the short form,
I mean,
short form is really good for weird stories, because it's like, it allows you to get, right to the meat of the thing, and as opposed to, a lot of feature length horror movies, you wait like half the movie for something slightly unusual to happen.
Well, with the movie Street Trash, how hard was that to actually really get off the ground and going? Because I don't know, people, I grew up in the 80s as a kid, but the PC culture and all that. And when you watch that movie, I mean,
Well,
you couldn't.
at the time, Street Trash was very un-PC back in the 80s, when everybody was already on PC.
Yeah.
So, and we knew it was intentionally offensive. It was intended to be outrageously, like, comedically offensive, right? And there was stuff in there that even, when I got an idea of what was in the script and stuff we were going to do, I was pretty amazed, that this was really going to happen. My scene, for instance, one of our effects people, Jennifer Aspinall, read the script and asked me, "This seems a joke, right? We're not actually shooting this."
Yeah, we are. That's why we got this. And then you just wiggle
Right,
it.
whatever, and it's and I came from a very sort of a protective, conservative Catholic background. Fortunately, my parents never managed to find out I had done this scene in this film.
Did they later, or no, not at all? Huh?
I don't think so. Either that, or they just didn't really think they could mention it.
Just like, oh well, Frank's living his dream, so we'll just turn a blind eye to it. With those two movies, Spookies and Street Trash. Well, we'll start with Spookies. Now that it's got a bit of a cult following and everything, is there a chance that you could possibly go on and maybe do a Spookies 2?
I am. I haven't talked to you about this, have I?
No.
No. Well, and I don't know what you may have heard, but that is actually what I'm working towards at this moment.
Oh, okay.
I'm almost finished with a screenplay. I have to negotiate some rights with Vinegar Syndrome as to, because although I've written something that's so far removed from Spookies that it doesn't have to be legally connected to Spookies. I think if I just told the horror community it's a follow up to Spookies, they'd get the idea. So I'm not worried about that. But it's something I'm actually incredibly happy with. It's something that I think is much closer to the type of thing I would have liked to been doing all these years. I think in many ways it's insanely ambitious. But I want to give as much as possible. I want to sort of make up for all the films that myself and my partners didn't get to make over far too many years. I want, I mean, I think we were far more capable at the time we made Spookies than we were allowed to be. Uh, and I think I feel a lot more capable now, certainly after more experience, more of a sense of what goes into a movie and what really matters to me when I see a film on screen.
And as a filmmaker, I'm pretty sure it's got to be really rewarding to know that I've not been forgotten. You know, people out there still want to
It's a
see what I've
total,
got.
you understand, it's a total reversal because effectively from roughly let's say a year or two after Spookies came out on video and at least was available in video stores, up until maybe the 2000s when the film again started to get some attention because it could be easily found on the internet and that sort of thing. Um, that it There was a vacuum in the middle of that. There was just like nothing that I could bring out of it that was positive for me or for anybody really. And occasionally people would say, "Oh, you should do a convention, or you should do this, or you should do that." But for years, I felt like, what? So that people can yell at me? I mean,
Well, I could tell you when we became friends on Facebook, and I think I had liked the page, and then you had friended me on Facebook, and I was like, "Holy shit, Frank Farel has gave me, a friend request," and I felt so honored and humbled by it, and I nerded out. I did because I was telling all my friends,
the
Frank
thing is,
Farel.
can I send you a friend request? Because I almost never send actual friend requests, and I'm trying.
Well, you were like, "Thanks for following." I think it was the Street Trash like fan page or something like
Maybe
that.
I don't know. I mean, maybe because maybe way back a few years ago, I was like, soliciting, possible friends on Facebook, but I get like friend requests all the time, constantly now, and I'm and I really make every effort I can to like reach out to fans and to be personable, and if I can, talk to them, or if they want to ask me something, or if they want some kind of connection, I realize how much importance that really has. I mean, just like with me, when I've met people who were creative heroes of mine, or who, I just felt some affinity for their work or something. I mean, it was just such a pleasure to be able to shake their hand and talk to them for a few minutes.
Yeah, like I was telling some guys the other night, I did kind of a radio slash podcast interview I did the other night with Bloody and Gory Radio, I think was the name of their station, and they're probably going
Mhm.
to message me back and be like, "No, that's totally not the name. I'm sorry, I'm bad with that, guys. My short term memory's kind of screwed." But we were talking that night, and they asked me how I got into horror, and I told them, I said, back in the day, the mom and pop VHS stores, and
Mhm.
um we had one called D&K Video, and I used to go in there, and I swear this is how I describe it to people. I said, just imagine being a 9 year old boy. You're walking into this store, and it's almost like a junkie going to see their dealer in the alley. She was not legally supposed to rent me these movies at all, and she would sneak them to me, like Street Trash and different films like that, Sleepaway Camp, all that stuff. And she'd be like, "Don't you tell your
I
mom."
don't know of any video store aside from maybe like Blockbuster or the chains that paid much attention to the
Yeah.
ratings once the
And
movies got the video stores.
but she knew my grandparents and my mom real well. She's like, "Don't you tell them I gave you this shit, because I'm going to deny it and say you stole it." Just
Right.
things like that. But it was,
Yeah, I think a lot of the furor over horror, like in England, they had the big video nasty scare back in the 80s where they were censoring everything.
mhm.
I think kids especially kids who are interested in horror, know how to respond to it. If you know what I'm saying, they're not going to be scarred for life. Probably, they're going to be able to put it in context. They understand it's not reality. Um, and I and I and believe me, it sort of floors me at times because I now have friends who were telling me about, oh, I just showed my 5-year-old Street Trash for the first time, and I was like, okay, but that's fairly common at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, did you cover his eyes when my scene came up? Or did you go, "Hey, look, there's Uncle Frank."
Well, I
Whack.
think I think I think a lot of parents these days are just sort of like they don't feel, you know, stuff like that, which ultimately is make believe and not, it's I think kids I at one time of a certain age, you wouldn't show them something because they would freak out. They wouldn't be able to handle it. But most kids nowadays have seen everything already.
Yeah, and I mean, it basically now it's not as you're not as sheltered from it now as what you used to be. Like I was just saying, when I had to go in there and she had to sneak it to me like she was sneaking me drugs.
Right.
I
Yeah.
I remember her horror section was this back room right next to where the adult videos were,
Mhm.
so it was kinda kept off to the side just like it was porn,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and that's not what it is today. Today, it's out front, and it's not as, taboo now as what it used to be.
Well, porn is practically mainstream at this point, so it doesn't, it doesn't have that stigma attached to it anymore. In fact, I mean, there's a big collector's market these days for old porn.
Yeah,
Vinegar Syndrome is one of the biggest distributors.
I mean, and I mean, that industry has come a long way, and I mean, my god, the actors and actresses from it are, like, gazillionaires, for God's sake. I
Some of them
mean,
are. Some of them. A lot of them have had a bad end. To tell
yeah.
the truth.
Yeah, I've read some stories on some of the older starlets from especially the '80s, battling addiction and different things like that, and coming from broken homes and running to the porn industry and just
Yeah, I think there's a little more regulation over it now, etc. But at the same time, it's like I don't think the porn industry never became. There was a time in the '70s that people were talking, oh, porn's going to be the next big thing. We're going to have mainstream porn films with big stars, and that never happened.
yeah, I mean, Sylvester Stallone, I think, had a cup of tea in the porn
And no,
industry.
he did like one or two, like, and they weren't even hardcore. They were like softcore movies, but I mean that wasn't unusual for a lot of people at that time because that was what was around if you were looking for work. But at the same time, that was they were the films had become so popular and there was so much publicity around porn for a time in the '70s that people really seriously were waiting for Hollywood to start doing porn.
Carrie said vivid and Seymour butts.
Yes, yes, yes.
Carrie's one Carrie's one of my real good friends. She's from the UK, and she if I can go back to this other comment that she had, she said, the guy that originally distributed Spookies, distributed Nico Mastorakis, or however he's
Oh yeah, I can
Mastakeris,
see. I can see the message on the screen here.
Isle of Death, which was banned here.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Sam Raimi even had to go to court in the UK over the Evil Dead because of the fact that 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 tree scene.
A lot of that stuff. See, this is what I was inferring before when I talked about kids understanding that something is sort of make believe, even if it's explicitly bloody or horrifying. Um, the Evil Dead, like Street Trash, monsters die and have explosions of colored liquid in a very similar way. This is not reality. What are you censoring?
I mean, I have yet to just watch a guy walk down the street and just explode all over the
Well,
side of my
the thing
car.
is, it's because it seems to veer into that. I think it's looked at a certain way. Meanwhile, things have changed so drastically that a show like The Walking Dead is sometimes just like wall to wall, like explicit close-ups of gore.
Yeah, there was a death of one of the main characters on there where the zombies were literally ripping his intestines out. They were disemboweling him, and I'm like, this is on TV. Where 20 or 30 years ago, this would have never
Yeah,
happened.
and I think that's probably a good thing. They've been able to put it in a context to realize, oh yeah, it's fantasy. It's not, it's not something somebody's going to go out and do tomorrow morning because they saw it. Uh, but but at the same time, it's like I'm wondering how did we transition to that exactly? Because even a few years before something like Walking Dead, I mean, the networks didn't want TV, didn't want to touch anything like that.
I was talking to a guest that I had on yesterday, Deidre Kling. She's a painter and artist and all that, and she does a lot of horror inspired work.
Right.
And we were even talking about that. It was like when we were kids, especially us 80s Gen X kids, if you walked around and said you liked horror movies or had a Fangora magazine on you, you were kind of looked down on.
Oh yeah, believe me, I went through. I mean, I started going through this back when in like the late '60s or early '70s or something, where and I used to get like Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, which, if you can imagine, was a film magazine for kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing that exists anymore.
And yeah, I mean, you got bullied and put down and everything, and people's and other kids' parents would be like, "Don't go near that John Evans kid over there. He looks like he could be a serial
Well,
killer."
and
'Cause you're like,
look, my own parents used to make fun of me. I mean, it was just like, and it's a weird mixture of things, though. It's you look down on partially because people think, oh, if you like these kind of stories, you have very juvenile tastes, and you're not like, this isn't something an adult would find worthwhile. That changed to a huge extent. Horror is really part of the mainstream now in a way it wasn't years ago. But there's always been that fringe, and it's been very much a thing that began with kids. I think partially because kids identify with and love monsters. I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, I go in my living room and like I tell people, I have a massive horror collection of autographs and all this stuff. I probably went way overboard, but people will come to my house and they're like, "This is so freaking cool," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Where in the hell were you people at in the '80s when I was a kid and getting threatened to get my ass kicked on the playground and all this other
yeah,
stuff?"
no, well, first of all, you got to realize that, like, traditionally, and this goes on to this day, if you have like interests outside of like the normal so-called range of interest, and especially if like maybe you're smarter than some of these other kids because you have a lot of interest, you're gonna have to take shit. That's just part of the deal.
Yep.
I
Just
mean,
like comic books now. Comic books, everybody's like, "Oh, it's so cool you read comic books."
oh, same,
And
no, same, because I'm a comics reader too. Same thing. It's like I had a few years after I got out of high school, I meet a kid I went to high school with, Tommy Starpoli, right? He was like a real like street character, etc. He goes, I don't remember back in school, you're always reading them books. Why are you always reading them books? How do you answer that?
my dad, my dad especially has always been, even now that I'm 46 years old, he's so supportive of it. And my mom was too before she passed. But there was so many other people in my family that was like, "When you going to grow up, John? When you going to grow up?" And I always I would always say, "Guess what? I'm always going to be a Toys R Us kid, so you can just go," you
Right.
know.
Look, I'm on just before my 40th birthday. My father comes to me and he says, "You're going to be 40 years old soon. Then what are you going to do?" And I just say, "Well, I guess I'll then be 41."
It's like, "Dad, I've been trying to be a
And the
filmmaker."
thing was, yeah, I mean, I was still pursuing a career in film, and I still was not exactly succeeding, and I still was like incredibly frustrated. But somehow I kept going, and I didn't know how to stop. You know what I'm saying? I still believed something could happen, that I could still somehow get what I wanted in this field. And actually, it's looking like that is a possibility at this time, since my films have. I mean, Spookies is at this peak of its popularity, that it sort of almost came out of nowhere for a lot of people who weren't that aware of it, and suddenly it's available in perfect quality with a documentary that explains in detail what happened during the making of the film. And Street Trash has been like pretty much a cult, literally a cult classic, I would say, for many years at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that toilet scene of the guy melting into the toilet after he drank the Viper. I mean, that I've seen memes of that, gifs of that, all them cool
Right.
things
No,
that
it's
kids
it's a
have.
very iconic image, and I mean, I have this great fortune that because there were thousands of low budget horror movies done between the 70s and 80s, and I have the very good fortune to be closely associated with two of them that are, despite being on the lower budget end, seem to have made an impact and are remembered and are given some significance above other movies from that time, and that people have a lot of personal affection for, and that just means so much.
Yeah, there was a film that I always loved as a kid that nobody it was so obscure like Spookies and nobody really paid much mind to it. Blood Rage, about the two twin brothers, the one
Mhm.
that killed the guy and blamed it on his brother and he got put in the asylum, and it was it was basically the first real Thanksgiving horror movie, and it was one of those grindhouse
Right.
drive-in movies gems, I say, that got lost to time, and then Joe Bob Briggs, like I said, he put it on the last drive-in, and all of a sudden, they got a cult following.
Right. I mean, see, I guess that's the thing that I have to like sometimes clarify for people. Um, I love schlock movies, and I love most schlock horror movies. I don't aspire to make schlock myself, which Spookies in many ways turned out to be some people's definition of schlock. But I have great love for films that are just entertaining, despite maybe and maybe they are intentionally schlocky or maybe they're unintentionally, but they just happen to have the right combination of things, including usually lots of unintentional laughs. So that does a lot for me. To me, that's like supreme entertainment.
Yeah, and I've heard people look down on schlock over the years, not well, even back in the day too, and like you said, it's got its appreciation now. It's not so damned. It's not looked at as, oh, well, that's just ugh, whatever. Because I
Well, I
run
think
into so many horror fans that are like, oh, I hate horror comedies. Well,
you're talking about
I
all exploitation movies from that time, and they were looked down on because they were quote exploitation movies. There was nothing quality about that kind of a label.
yeah,
Uh, and it wasn't. I remember that gradually that films and directors from that area started to get more recognition, be taken more seriously. A lot of people who became some of the biggest film directors came from exploitation. Many of them from horror and that sort of thing. I think what sort of happened in all these years since is that all this stuff that I was so not ashamed of, but I sort of had to keep on the down low so that like not everybody knew I was into horror the way I was. But that I feel that it's come to it's come to a point where it's respectable. Like you were sort of saying before, it's like you can sort of say, yeah, I like horror movies, or I like this, and people go, oh, that's cool. Where at one time it was just not cool.
yeah, I've turned on some friends to like old silent films,
Oh,
and
I'm very big on silent films. I know silent films.
and especially The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which was a German expressionist film, and I think that film, even though it's 100 years old, is still one of the most beautiful films ever made. And I go back to it and watch it so often because without there being any spoken dialogue in at all throughout that entire movie, just the scenery and everything about it invokes so much creepiness and atmosphere
Right.
and
But that's because I mean that was the craft at that time. They put so much effort into design, into composing shots carefully, into and very influenced by painting and things like that. It's probably my biggest complaint about the fact that technology has made things so easy is I see more sloppy filmmaking than like I've ever seen before. Even with movies that seem to have pretty good budgets, like everything looks like it's just two guys walked in with handheld cameras and just shot the scene.
I don't know how you feel about it, Frank, but me, I'm one of these type. It's like, okay, I appreciate kills in horror movies, but so many of these films, like when I watched the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix the other day, I made it very well known I didn't like it. I'm a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan, a huge Toby Hooper fan, and I didn't feel that movie served the legacy that the '74 had.
It
But
was
that
not.
was
It was not remotely interested in doing that. And here's my other theory about it. First of all, if you notice, it has like a couple of like somewhat big names attached to it, like the producers, the guy who did the Evil Dead remake, it directed it.
yep.
Uh, and so you'd think that maybe these guys know a thing or two, or they care about horror or whatever. I honestly feel like whoever owns the rights now got the rights, said we'll make a Texas Chainsaw movie. I would almost be willing to bet that their claim that this is a direct sequel to the first movie was something
It
that came
was.
Right, but it's something they came up with late in the marketing process. I'm willing to bet that in other words they said, "Hey, if we tell them this is a direct sequel, they're going to be far more interested in it." Whereas if you've seen the movie, it doesn't seem to be a sequel to anything.
No, it to me, I went about making a post on social media. I said I called it the Bulgarian Chainsaw Massacre because it was filmed in Bulgaria, and then I put a Texas Chainsaw Massacre parody because to me that's what it seemed like, was a parody of it.
It did, well, to me, it didn't seem like so much like a parody, but like what a lot of films, and this is true of many franchise films, where I feel like they get to the point where they're doing films that seem like not even bad copies of the films they've made. They seem like bad copies of other people's bad copies of those films. Um, there was nothing. I mean, what I would like to see, and what they threw away, like after Tobe Hooper did the second Texas Chainsaw film, they threw away the sort of, there was a mythical quality to the character. There was something like, that he was, the boogeyman in that same sense. Not so much in the Michael Myers way or something that he was unkillable, but to tell the truth, I mean, given a choice, man, he's the scariest of the damn major, franchise maniacs, I think.
There she is,
Oh,
Miss
okay.
Mandy Antone. Well, you get to see a pretty face, Frank, instead of looking at me. So,
Hello, Mandy. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Nice to meet you as well. I am so sorry that I'm late,
That's okay.
but better late than never.
but
Okay, there's
with
like a
that
little bit
Texas,
of a delay for me, so I'm sorry if I start to sound funny. Everything's kind of
okay.
like,
No problem.
I think it's my connection.
Well, with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, my biggest problem, Frank, was nothing was explained in this new one. It was like, well, how the hell did Leatherface get to this orphanage? Who dropped him off there?
That's
Why
why I
is
say I think they made this film without any real direct connection. It just they just this was the idea they came up with, whatever. It didn't make much sense to me because here, let me ask you how you feel about this. First of all, I feel horrible. They've gotten to the point, and they got this way a long time ago, where they're just too willing to accept any piece of shit that comes along if it has a certain connection to a franchise or to something that they think they like, even if the last 10 movies in the franchise were garbage. They still have this hope, and they don't seem to understand. I mean, like the new Texas Chainsaw was put out for $1. It wasn't put out for any other reason. But I honestly think it would be no problem if you got a creative writer, and I don't mean somebody who's just doing what the bosses at the company want to make the film commercial. I'm saying creative director, creative writer, and they went back to as much of the original elements of Texas Chainsaw as it was, which is essentially like, people out in the middle of nowhere, and that's part of the horror of it. It's like you're in this big outdoor environment, and there's just nobody and nothing, and there's no place to run or hide for the most part. And that film and the second one, to some extent, really just maintained a certain sense of bizarreness and difference. And then and I can tell you, when I saw the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the 70s, it was like a revelation. It was like different than anything. It changed things dramatically. And I don't think any of the previous or the subsequent films thought about that aspect of it very much.
yeah, I mean, it basically showed young aspiring filmmakers like yourself that with a little bit of duct tape, spit, and some willpower, you could make something, and it matter and have a legacy to it.
Well, it's just you have to have some kind of a vision. I mean, I think Hooper did have a vision, and he got something on screen. I think most, I mean, especially in this franchise, and this probably has the weakest films of all the major horror franchises. Right,
And it's a shame. It's such a shame.
I think, to me, it's a scarier concept than, say, Halloween or Friday the 13th. And I also think I just don't think it would take that much if you got some talented people who their only desire was to make the best damn film they could make.
I argued this with, well, it wasn't necessarily arguing because a lot of people that I had this conversation with agreed with me. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a movie that I think works better, and you keep it within its time period of, say, the 70s, early 80s, and
Right.
you keep it there and not try to shine it up and put it into current day or present.
I kind of agree. I thought the idea of having like Leatherface be like, now 80 years old or something, if you thought about it for even a moment, you really didn't buy it.
and then they have Sally Hardesty come back in and for 5 minutes, and then they kill her off, and I'm like, what in the hell are you doing?
A
Why?
lot of people seem to feel that was just a reaction to the last Halloween film to have to try and capitalize on some of that aspect of it. If so, it's a really low attempt to rip something off. It's like really pathetic.
Yeah, it. I tell you when the movie lost me, and it was when the kid went in the house to try to go get the Confederate flag that was hanging outside. And it's for a split second, guys, and if you can go in and look, when you see him, it's like the shot, I guess what you would call being panned out from him, and he's walking around just looking through the house, and if you look off in the corner just for a split second, you see Leatherface sitting in a chair without his mask on. They show his freaking face, and it's like, oh my god, you just destroyed the entire mystique
I
of
know
this
it just made it. To tell the truth, that they did that with Michael Myers too, and when they do that, it's just like there's no way that can be good because it's just going to be some schlub guy who looks pathetic, basically.
And he didn't even look 70. He looked like a 50-year-old guy. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you're trying to do here.
Aside from the marketing, there was no connection with the first film. Maybe there was some mention of it in some of the dialogue, etc. But I honestly feel, here's what I think. I think that there should be some kind of a movement generated by horror fans to say, hey, Hollywood, you can, these are films, these are franchises. You've made millions and millions of dollars off us over many, many years. And if you're going to do more films, we'd come to see them probably, but we'd like them to be good. Why don't you do something we will think is good instead of everyone arguing over it? I mean, first of all, I can't believe there are people who actually like this new film.
So I ran into this one guy, and he just could not understand why I didn't like it. And I said, well, okay, being that we're going to have a civil argument about this, I said, what is it about you like? Well, some of the greatest kills I've ever seen. Well, if you're only going off the kills, then you are completely lost on what horror movie is supposed to be. It's supposed to tell you a disturbing story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not just a gore fest of kill, kill, kill.
Well, that's like essentially hearing a bunch of punchlines to jokes that nobody actually told.
Yeah. So I'm like, but I come to find out he was like a super Fede Alvarez fan. So I was like, oh, well, then that explains it. If you're a big time Fede Alvarez fan, then you're going to defend him till the end. I'm glad that you have.
I'm amazed that the film, I think somehow got positioned, even though it didn't get into theaters. I know it got seen by a lot of people on streaming. Probably some of them wouldn't have seen it if it had been in theaters.
A friend of mine in Mandee's, who Mandee actually works with a little bit, Steve Merlo, he's actually doing a fan film that's like an unofficial prequel to, well, I don't know if you would necessarily call it a prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's called the Sawyer Massacre, where Grandpa has
I've heard about this project, actually.
Yep. And I'm an associate producer on it. Mandee is too. The podcast sponsors it. And Steve is all about trying to uphold the legacy that Tobe Hooper set forth because he has a real love for the franchise and he wants to do justice by it. And that's why he's doing it. Like you said, these guys were all about making a buck off of it, and they didn't care.
Well, I guess, I don't know. To me, they're making a film that in their minds, they're trying to appeal to the largest number of people possible. They're not trying to appeal to anybody who's discriminating. They're not trying to appeal to anybody that's going to care, how the story that they're telling goes. And unfortunately, they're right, because a lot of horror fans, like I was saying a moment ago, are just too accepting. They should stop being so willing to settle just to get something.
It's like, ooh, look at that shiny turd over there. Well, that looks great. Let's go watch it.
I mean, be aware that from the beginning of horror movies and science fiction movies, too, I mean, there have been movies with sequels. Almost always the sequels are less quality because the studio doesn't usually want to put as much money into it. And they usually wind up getting less attention, and they make less money, right? So that changed in recent years when sequels became the way that Hollywood now works. That if you can get a property and you can continue to make sequels for the rest of your life, then you've got it made.
Mm-hmm.
So they now put some thought and effort into it.
I guess that's like, thank God you got back control of Spookies, because it didn't fall into somebody else's hands where they just ruined the legacy that you had there for it.
Well, I mean, I sort of hope that wouldn't. I mean, that's one of the things I was sort of waiting for at some point, that somebody announces a remake of or something of Spookies, and and I've barely had anything to do with it. So I mean, it's but it's the way the mind works, and to tell the truth, it's not inconceivable. It's because it's the minute somebody at a company, who's looking for titles that have some previous history and some kind of respect or reputation, they will consider doing a sequel or a follow-up or connection film to something, simply because it's maybe 2% more chance of it seeing a profit.
The only slasher remake I could say I ever watched that I actually enjoyed, and a lot of people hate it, and it's understandable because I understand the point that they were trying to make by it. And Mandy there last week when we had Jason Pitts on, he basically made me realize that. But it was the 2009 Friday the 13th remake. I liked the movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
I thought it did fine by the actual lore and the legacy of those past films, and did good by it. And
Mhm.
I understand people's reservations about it and maybe negative thoughts on it, but I didn't think that it completely crapped on everything that had come before it.
Right. I mean, I have nothing against people continuing to do films that are commercial, that are follow-ups, that are remakes, or whatever. I just feel more effort can be put into these things if this is what you're going to do. It's part of the commercial reality of the movie, marketplace, that you have to get people interested in. If they're going to come and see something because it's a sequel, then you should probably do films like that.
I have always had an argument that, and maybe some others share it with me, that maybe the horror movie genre as a whole, it needs to me, I think it belongs best with the indie filmmaker, because then their hands are not tied by these
It
big budget studios. And
it well, I would agree in terms of the contemporary horror film, because if you like the traditional older type of horror story was more elegant, more fun, more gentle, more mannered, and everything else, and that changed. And now I think the only people that feel unafraid to do things are usually independents. I mean, that's the only reason that street trash is the monstrosity that it is.
but it's so good, I love it.
Right.
Have
I
you?
mean, we started talking before about the political incorrectness of it. People are still offended by it to this day, and in fact, they're more offended by it because it's become less politically incorrect over the years,
But
or more politically incorrect.
I've had people, say things about that, but I've also tried to get them to understand, like, this movie was made in 1986, 87. You got to understand that was 3 decades ago, going on close to 4 decades ago.
Right.
You know, everything is a product of its time. I said, and plus two, I said, filmmakers back in the 80s weren't scared to step on that line of, PC and not
They
PC.
weren't, and especially with the exploitation angle in the 70s and 80s, they were looking for stuff that shocked people. They wanted people to be potentially outraged. The only difference with street trash is that we didn't really impose almost any limits on what we were doing in terms of worrying about who we would possibly offend.
Yeah, I mean, you had the one guy going into the grocery store, he tied the pants around the bottom and he's just stealing everything, and that, and I mean, just just I guess the exploitation of homeless people in general. But
And
I
the
mean,
thing is, I have to say, as far as outrageous as a lot of the film is, I find a lot of the performances are the characters. Some of them are very charming and likable. Some of them are are actually like very, you can get behind them. I feel like we accomplished a lot more in that film than the average low budget horror film from that period, in terms of just it's very character oriented, highly comedic at a time when maybe there were horror comedies, but this was like going from body melt to just a lowbrow comedy scene in the next bit. And for many people to this day, they still find it a little disconcerting. They're sort of thrown off by the way it bumps around from one genre to the other.
well, I got a sick sense of humor, and I still love it. But I find the quote unquote main character of the film, that's one of my favorite parts about it. How he's constantly just trying to get a sip of that Viper, but somehow it's always winding up in somebody else's hands, and then finally he realizes, oh, I don't need to drink this shit because it's going to kill me.
Yeah, I can't. I feel much more pleased with the way Street Trash turned out, certainly than with Spookies. It world of difference. No directives from the top that were destroying the film little by little. And I feel proud of Street Trash in terms of it was intended to be so damn defensive, but it's more beloved now than ever.
No.
And I can't. You okay there?
I could still see her.
Okay.
Can you still hear me, Mandee?
Yeah, my cat.
Oh, your
Sorry.
cat. Well, Mandee, I'm going to ask you, have you ever seen
Yeah,
Street
it's
Trash?
Lucifer. Me, yes, I've seen it. I was actually like looking over like what people actually think of it today and everything, and as Frank was saying, a lot more people today are extremely offended by it, and it's like, and a lot of people are complaining that there was no real basis to the story, like it doesn't give you any backstory or anything like that. I always enjoyed it.
What
So
backstory?
with me,
Wait a
it's
minute.
like,
What backstory are they looking for?
yeah, that was the thing. It's like they want to know why the person was searching and everything and found the vials and everything, and they're just, it was like, it's just, but that was like the most common thing that people were saying,
At its core, it's basically
like
just
when
a
they
day
find.
in the life of.
Yeah, but that's really one of those things that shouldn't matter. It's like it's irrelevant to the story, really.
But I was like surprised. I'm like, I go, why did you need to know that? It's just like, just watch the movie. I'm like, just watch it.
Yeah, the
But
biggest objections I've seen in recent years to Street Trash is in our depiction of the homeless, which was really pretty accurate because I lived in New York City at the time, and people of this sort were on the streets all over. They were not in good shape mentally or physically, and I mean, yeah, we had the nerve to do a movie about them and treat it like it was funny, but it wasn't done with any malice, certainly. And I think the thing is now that people are just more hyper aware of things that might be objectionable. If any person or any group is being given the short end of the stick, they feel that's not proper and that shouldn't be allowed. But I can't say, I don't think it's offensive in the way I've seen. I mean, I've seen other films that people have found offensive for one reason or another. I don't think Street Trash is anti-homeless.
I didn't find it to be.
No, I just think it deals with a strata of society and ultimately, if you look at the whole the entire setting, I mean, it's utterly depressing. I mean, it's sad. It's horrible. But we play it, for comedy for the most part, and to some people that's offensive, and it's more offensive now, I think, than it was.
To me, it was more of just like a day in the life of some homeless people. To me, it was like the wackiest like weekend you could possibly imagine.
See, that's the thing too, is it doesn't just concentrate. It's not just a horror movie that focuses on the horror plot and that's all you've got. It really was about all these characters and the way they lived and their interactions with each other, and and it was designed to be that. It was designed to have sort of that carnival style atmosphere of like anything can happen.
God, I hate to see how Lloyd Kaufman makes out in today's society then with his movies, because Lloyd Kaufman.
Lloyd is not a Street Trash fan.
Oh, he's not?
He has on a few occasions stated his dislike of Street Trash, which from what I can determine from people I've spoken to is because he has been upset when it's been a lot of people have identified it as a trauma movie.
Well, it's pretty much what trauma was back in the day.
Right, but they didn't make it, and I personally, and this is an objective opinion, I think it's better made than any trauma film I've seen.
Yeah, that I can agree with. I mean, Lloyd Kaufman is just Lloyd. From what I can gather, is a very impulsive person. Like he'll just get an idea and then automatically just starts making a movie, and
Right.
just with the first draft of the script and everything, it's just like go go go.
Yeah, I mean, Troma was like very prominent in terms of its location in New York City back in the 70s, 80s. I mean, there was like the Troma building. Are you at all familiar with that?
I
It's
didn't
like
know they had a building.
it was like a 6-story building with a painting from top to bottom of the Toxic Avenger, and it, and it was known as the Troma building. And like after Street Trash, myself, people I know went over there, talked to them about possible projects or something. But they really did, they were, one of my partners from Spookies went to them afterwards and talked to them, and they were like, "Oh, well, if you want to make a movie, we're willing to put up $5,000." And he said, "Well, that won't even cover the negative for the camera."
Yeah, especially today.
Well, nowadays nowadays if you shoot on video, you can make a film for literally nothing. So
I was talking to a friend of mine on Facebook. Was it Friday? Yeah, it was Friday, and he was just sending me a picture from the set of a movie that he was working on, and he had this really big fancy camera sitting there, and I was like, "Wow, that looks expensive." He goes, "Yeah, it's $97,000." I was like, "What the fuck?"
really, they must have some money in their budget.
Yeah, he's working on a SAG project. He got
Right.
lucky and got in on a SAG project. But
Yeah, I mean, it's my opinion that right now, there's such a wide range of video cameras. Even some of the cheapest ones give an image that you couldn't have gotten on a high quality camera a few years back. I think there's a lot more, I think, involved with how you use it and how much to be able to stretch and utilize the technology that you have. I just see, I think I mentioned this when we first started talking. I just see so many films and they look like crap. It's like, why do they look like crap? It's hard to make things look like crap nowadays.
But I will say this with him, when I was talking to him, I said, "Well, how do you like working on that?" He goes, "I hate working on this SAG project." He
Huh.
goes, "Everything has got to go through this union. Everything. They got to
Oh, yeah.
know."
Yeah.
He's like, "I hate this so much." And he's like, "I just want to get it over." And I
Right.
can
I mean,
understand that.
I've worked exclusively on non-union projects. Not that I would, be adverse to working on a union project. It's just that I guess that the way I sort of came up, the first thought on my mind is always, how can we get the same quality but make it cheaper? I don't want to save money so I can put it in my pocket. I want to put it into the film.
I think Morgan Wilburn probably had a really good question here, and it probably pertains to even the movie making community. He's a director too.
I see his question. Why can't the horror community get along? I don't know. What the hell is fucking wrong with them? Seriously.
It's
like I just said before, like I said before, fans should be demanding better films from some of the bigger companies. It's one thing if you're making like cheap, low budget, your own micro budget movie, all right, do whatever you want. But if you've got a well-known franchise and you're going to get a lot of people very eager to see it, put some effort into it. I think the horror community is very competitive right now. Partially, first of all, is there any other community for any genre of film that is as excited about movies, that is as interactive, that has as wide a network of people all over the world that love these movies? I don't think so.
no, I've never seen the romance community or the
There's no
action.
romance community. There's no, action film community. I mean, there are lots of fans of action movies, obviously, but there's not this cohesiveness to it where people feel like they're bonded by something that they all share. And for that alone, there should be more real, solidarity and brotherhood. There should be like no real reason to compete. But I've heard like what I think are ridiculous stories. I've heard people doing films and then people working with them, like essentially just totally ripping them off, stealing their story, stealing half their crew, going off to make a new version of the movie they just made.
Like he just said here, he says, "I'm really tired of the cash grab remakes and reboots, and I welcome original stories."
Yes, yeah, but the problem is, what the real problem is? It's harder to sell original stories, even to the public, even to the fans, if you know what I'm saying. Because if you like a certain genre of almost anything, you sort of want to see the same thing or something similar that has certain aspects of something that you have appreciated before. So there's always that. I just think it takes an effort to make something a little different, a little unusual, a little special, and I think it's always possible. I just don't think a lot of people make the effort.
Yeah, and people don't realize. I mean, it's not rocket science here. We as the consumer hold the power over these studios to make good movies because it's our money that fuels their films. So if we take away our money and not support that trash that they're putting out, no pun intended for street trash, but
Right.
and that gets their attention because nothing gets big movie studios attention like losing money. I mean, you probably know that
It's
better than
true, but
anybody.
I think there's still not the respect for the overall horror community, meaning they're seen as an important market. And it was only within, I don't know, maybe the past 25 years or so that Hollywood even started to pay attention to people who were super fans of certain types of movies. There was a time where they I used to go to comic book and movie conventions, and movie companies were barely represented there. They paid very little attention.
I know here in Honolulu we have what was called the
You
Amazing.
live in Honolulu?
Yeah,
Oh, holy shit! I got to find an excuse to come visit you.
come on, I'll be your tour guide.
I've been in Honolulu. I love Hawaii.
I'll put on an aloha shirt and one of those hats and just take you all over the island. But yeah, our island here, it doesn't. Our comic book convention, I think it had like one film director there the last time I was there. I used to go there and draw
Oh,
at the draw at some of the cons, and this poor guy was in there and he was trying to get his film over, and it was like, wow, man, everybody's just ignoring this dude, and I don't know what it was, but a lot of us that were there were, trying to support him and stuff, and then finally he did catch the eye of somebody there, but they were a patron there,
right.
and I guess he got something with them, but it was like, wow, he's like the only movie here, and this is
I
basically
think a big part of it, especially for the indie people that's doing small films, is you got to be like marketing yourself all the time. You got to pretend nobody else is going to be marketing you. You have to personally have an involvement with that on every level. I think on the one hand, you'll know what's being done, and you'll be able to sort of orient it towards what you think is going to do the best for you. And plus, I'm a big believer in connecting with the audience and the fans. I think the more that you do, the opportunity that's here's the thing. For years, people always talked about indie filmmakers, and the way Hollywood
It's 10
and
o'clock.
respectable industry people thought of indie filmmakers. They were the people who made low budget, serious minded movies, like dramas and things that dealt with complex human relationships and everything. And this is no disrespect to those movies, but for a long time, indie filmmaker and horror films didn't even go together. Eventually they sort of became part of the same category, but for a long time, it's like you go to some of these film festivals, like places like Sundance, etc. You we're not likely to see horror films getting much attention.
no. I mean, like here, I've got this ambition that I want to start a horror convention here because there has never been a horror convention here in Honolulu ever.
Right.
I want to, but because of the pandemic, it's kind of holding me up. But like me and Luke, we've talked about it extensively because, like with that guy, he was trying to push a horror movie, but he was at a comic convention and nobody was there to see a horror movie. They were
Right.
there to see Jim Lee and who else was there? Greg Capullo and all these legendary comic book people.
Yeah.
They didn't give two shits about, indie filmmaker guy over here.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's a lot of crossovers between the two fan bases, but like I said, I just think, if you're a filmmaker, publicize the hell out of yourself. Just everybody you meet at a convention, you should be telling them who you are.
oh, he was passing out cards and everything. Yeah. And I watched the trailer for his movie and I was like, dude, this is good. You have something here. And it was based on like Hawaiian lore, like the night marchers and different paranormal
Right.
urban legends here and different things. And it was very well done. And he did it on nothing, for the trailer. And he was just trying to get somebody like a, distributor so he could finish it. And that was all he was wanting. And he finally got that, I think. You know, I don't know what ever became of the guy
Right.
after.
The thing is, I mean, it's only, you know, I mean, nowadays you go to most of the big conventions within like the states and in the major cities, and the major film companies, they put like ridiculous amounts of money into the publicity and marketing they do at those. You
Yeah,
know,
New York City Comic Con is, you know, big example. San Diego Comic Con.
to the extent that they pretty much dominate all those big conventions now. You know, all their signage, all their, you know, their tables, marketing, etc. And they're smaller people by you know, many of those, but you know, I mean, the earliest conventions of this sort were just like, you know, a bunch of average people, you know, at a table with their comic books and shit.
I remember early comic conventions in the 80s being in like a Ramada Inn's
Right. Well, the
meeting
smaller
room.
ones still are all over. Yeah.
Just smelled of like old liquor and cigarette smoke in there and stuff. You know, it just like a flea market setup in there where you'd buy like old dollar comics, and sometimes you might have somebody in there like a Denny O'Neil or somebody in there signing some comic books.
Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, what can I say? I lived in the New York City area for years, so there were frequent conventions, and I got to attend a lot of those things. But nowadays, I mean, I think there's the internet again, once again, just like comes to the rescue, and you know, it's possible to get attention at events like that now. You just have to get a word out there online. I mean, it's unavoidable.
Morgan's got a question for you, Frank. He said, what's Frank's advice for getting the best deal for distribution? Because he's making a film right now.
I don't know if there is. I mean, aside from, you have to essentially talk to as many people as you can and hear what kind of deals that they got, and you'll meet maybe one in 200 or 300 people who got a great deal. I don't even know if people still get great deals anymore. The problem is when you, especially when you're doing like something like a genre film and it's within a certain low budget range, most distributors are just they're not gonna respect your film for what it is on an individual basis. They might, you know, some of them actually do have taste or the ability to judge things. Most of them are just simply be looking at what are your costs, what is the potential market and audience for this film, and you know, that's what they're going to sort of be judging you on. I find, I mean, I belong to a couple of Facebook groups, you know, that are just about, you know, which distributors are crooked and which are worthwhile. The problem is there are a lot of distributors that even, you know, have names I'm sure that you'd recognize if I mentioned, that have been around for a while. And you'd think, oh, well, they must be respectable. They've released movies that are fairly well known and etc. But they seem to be as crooked as everybody else.
Yeah, the movie business from I've been doing this podcast for almost 2 years, and just being around and making friends with a lot of people that's in indie and in mainstream film, it's cutthroat, big time cutthroat. It's, you
Absolutely.
know, and you know, I've seen guys talking about how one of my friends in particular said it almost drove him away from wanting to do it anymore. Just the passion was gone because of
They drain it
him.
out of you.
You know, and he was like, thank God I got back into the indie films where I started, because working in the mainstream studios, he was like, it was all about deadlines and money. It
Because
was
you're
never
making,
about passion.
that's why the general term nowadays for all media is product. And that's really, it's in a way that's always the way it's been, but it's only recently that even like average people refer to it as product because they hear that term all the time. And product is just product. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, it's not like nobody's using the word product and art in the same breath usually.
He says, I follow Joe Castro's Facebook groups on distributions.
Right. Yeah, I have too. You know, I think all you can do is just get as many people with direct experience, because you can't trust what any of the distributors tell you. There is, as far as I know, there is no accurate way to be able to check and or have any knowledge beyond what a distributor tells you the kind of business your film is doing. I presume they're a little more honest with the bigger companies and the bigger filmmakers because they want them to keep coming back. But for smaller filmmakers, I don't know. You know, I don't know what the answer is, because there was a time when if you made a low budget film and it did really well, you'd get some attention, and people might finance another film, or some distributor might want to get a hold of your next film. And nowadays, I don't know. I don't, I don't feel there's that kind of support from distributors, if you know what I'm saying. Maybe in a few cases here and there, but there should, I mean, as a filmmaker, I should know off the top of my head 2 or 3 distributors that are just considered honest and people that are worth doing business with, and I can't really name any.
Yeah, I reached out to one the other day for a friend, just for a friend, because he was out filming his movie and didn't have time. So as a favor to him, I was like, yeah, I'll email him real quick, see.
Right.
And I got a response back, and back and forth with him. And as soon as I told him what the movie was going to be about, and because it wasn't, I guess, what they were necessarily, they wanted something that was more, hip with what's going on now, like a slasher or something. And because this was more grounded in, say, an urban legend type story, they were completely like, yeah, we don't care, bye. And to me, I had never dealt with that
That's the
before.
most honest thing that they would probably tell you. It's like, we don't care.
Yeah. And they were like, sorry. And that was my first taste of dealing with a distribution company.
Right.
I mean, that was, I guess I lost my virginity that day, but it was
Because
like,
unfortunately, like I said, they're unless they happen to be real film lovers, which there are people in the business who are just in distribution. But a lot of them, they're just looking at your movie and everybody else's low budget movie as interchangeable pieces that will go on their schedule for distribution if they happen to pay for rights or whatever. And I don't even know with some of these companies nowadays if they put any special effort into something, if they think it's like especially worthwhile. So many films, and this is goes back through the history of film, get lost because the distributor just doesn't think that they're going to make much money, so they put it out with a weak campaign, and then it disappears more or less till people like you and I find it.
yeah, I mean, there was a movie in the 80s that was getting made for Marvel Comics. It was the infamous Fantastic Four movie
Yeah, I've
that,
seen it. I have a copy of it. Yes.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, was it cheesy and corny? Yeah, it was. But I thought the Thing suit and everything like that in it, I was
That
like,
movie, when I finally saw it, turned out to be better than I expected it to be, because I just had expected it like the absolute beyond belief worst. And things like the Thing suit, that was like far better than most things in the movie.
yeah. And the Doctor Doom, it looked like Doctor Doom from the comic books. The Johnny Storm thing, yeah, that was a little cheesy.
And that was a film that was only made so they could retain the rights, because they needed to make a film to retain the rights.
Yeah. Mandee, you got any questions for Frank?
I just not really, because I covered everything. It's like I just had wanted to. It's like, well,
Did you know that
what,
in Street? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't.
like when you started making your films and everything, and then like how you did the street trash and everything. Was that the type of films that you were always wanting to make, or was it just something that landed?
I started out, my initial interest in movies was in horror films. I then became interested in like almost all kinds of films. After that, I became like a big overall movie fan. My favorite genres are still probably horror and comedy, which many people say are two sides of the same coin. So I think, and the part of the reasons I like those genres is because they're audience genres, they're audience reaction genres. They're both, with a horror movie and a comedy, you go in and sit down and you know whether the audience is digging it or not. There's no question usually.
Well, from the background I've seen with you, I mean, you practically grew up working in movies. I mean, you worked at a theater, I think, selling tickets.
No, I did. Yeah, actually, not tickets. I managed repertory theaters. We show like old movies and oddball movies and things. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to get experience in as many aspects of the business as I could. I mean, so I worked I managed, like I said, repertory theaters. I worked in booking, and I was the print manager for United Artists Classics at one time, that handled their whole film library going back to the beginning. Yeah, I just I like the medium. I really like visual storytelling. It's something that I have never lost my passion for. Even though I've had a fair number of times I didn't know how I could hold on to my passion, to be quite honest, but I
Like you
managed.
said earlier, when you turn 40, your dad's like, "So what you going to do, Frank?"
I'll let you know when I'm 50.
It's like, I'm trying to make movies, Pop.
No, it comes down to, and it's just it's the film is it would be such a blessing if I could just be like an artist who did something like paint or whatever, where I had limited materials needed and I just needed me and those materials. But film, you need, and the same is true of theater and many other creative endeavors. You need lots of people. You need money to build things. You're creating sometimes a world or a universe, and you're trying to get people to buy into it and be willing to pay money to buy into it. So, uh, I think all I can say is I do what I do because I have a passion that won't let me not do it. So, for instance, it's like if I can get this, you asked me about a possible Spookies sequel. There is a follow up that I have almost completed writing. It's been in progress for a while. I think it's extremely ambitious. I have to figure out whether we can actually get enough money to make it. But it's nobody's going to be accusing me of laziness. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, right before I jumped on here with you, somebody had taken, I guess, like some of the actual footage that you had originally shot for Spookies and did like a fan edit, and then he put in his description as
That,
if anybody from the original movie sees this, just know I did this out of love.
right? No, that would be Dustin Ferguson. Do you know Dustin
Yep.
Ferguson? Yeah, Dustin's
No,
made like
I just came across his YouTube thing.
Dustin is like the most industrious, micro budget horror director that I know of. Meaning he's made like a film like every 2 weeks for many years at this point. And and he's, we were talking about schlock and stuff before. I mean, he does certain types of films, very low budget, certain things that he knows have enough of an audience, and he's made a living and he's done well. And he just got hired by another company to direct for them. So I sort of admire what he's done. I think I don't think it's the route I could go at this stage of my career, but he's managed to monetize it instead of having to worry all the time about things like distributors. And part of the reason he's been able to do that is he's done a lot of self-distribution, or he's made sure the distributors he's dealing with are at least semi-honest.
Well, when I got done watching it, I was like, how did that distributor not see promise in this? Because this actually tells a story that follows a flow, and it worked so great. And it was like,
because most distributors are not going to see something good and something bad and realize that they've seen something good and something bad.
because I was like blown away with it. He's like, you got to excuse the picture quality. I got the footage from secondary sources and all that, and he did a damn good job editing it together because the pacing of it and everything was great. It flowed great to me. I liked it, and I was like, I don't see the problem with why Frank and them had such a trouble with keeping what they originally wanted to do with it. And this guy was like, "Whoa, no, I want you to do a complete ripoff of Evil Dead."
Well, to tell the truth, that was something, if our film as we made it had been allowed to stand, at least as one of my partners said, it's like, even if it was terrible, it would be our terrible. It would be our mess. We would be able to say, yeah, we did it, but we can't say that.
No, but you can now. Now that you've got,
now I can say, hey, pretty good, huh?
Now that you've been able to get reassume control of what you.
Well, it's been a great thing. Like I've told you, like I was saying earlier, it's just a great thing after so many years of Spookies being this weight around my neck that I didn't want to actually tell people about. To have so many people have shown me their love for the film at this point, despite what happened to it in the editing room. I think it put an entirely new perspective in my head on what was now possible. I think I'm very confident we'll get to do the Spookies follow up, just because I think it's so damn good. I mean, I'm going to say that it's really fucking good.
And you know it's going to be good when you say really fucking
Well, because I think everything sucks, including my own work.
good. No. All this current horror crap that's coming out now, no, that's I call it shiny turds pretty much to me.
Well, I
It's
mean, as a fan myself, I just get, and I watch the trailer for almost every new thing that's coming along, and I get tired of seeing what looks like the same trailer for almost the same movie over and over. I think the slasher genre is just like way too played out at this point.
yeah, I think slasher genre could stand maybe taking a hiatus for a little while. And I said the same thing about comic book movies. When you start oversaturating a market with one particular genre or something, it kills it, and
Well,
it's best that it goes away
they're
for
in
a
the
little while.
process of doing that right now. They've hit they've already had a couple of the movies not do too well. They've got TV series coming out, like even their new ones for the next couple of years already scheduled. And I think at some point people are going to get superheroes are going to become so commonplace. They're not going to seem so super anymore.
No, I've gotten kind of tired of them.
Plus, it's like with the Marvel movies, and I got to say, the Marvel movies I got to give credit to, because they turned out from the first Iron Man and up to now, for the most part they turned out to be good movies, and I think that must have been an incredibly difficult thing to coordinate. It's really rare you can make movies that interlock like that have to have some consistent level of quality that actually managed to attain it. But they're already wearing out the genre, and I'm a fan of comics, and I used to dig all this stuff, and I never imagined there would be these elaborate special effects filmed for hundreds of millions of dollars. The last Avengers film is something like the third most expensive film ever made.
Yeah. And it's the same with Batman. Like, Batman movies aren't even special anymore. I used to look forward to them, and now it's like, oh crap, here comes another.
Well, a lot of
Batman.
people seem to be looking forward to this new one, actually.
Yeah, it's got Twilight Boy in it.
I know what you're thinking, but I actually think
I didn't like Twilight, but
I hate Twilight, but I think he's a decent actor.
Carrie says she's going to look
Robert
up.
Pattinson. I think he's going to do good with the part. I'm not that way. I like all the movies that come out and everything. I don't get to watch them all right away because they kind of do spit them out too quick. But I like everything equally. I think I'm a weirdo, I guess.
Okay,
I'm not going to complain.
Fine.
I like all the slasher films. I like all the remakes of the horrors, and it's like I love the originals more, but I enjoy watching everything. Everything.
You're not
John
like
sitting there saying, like,
no, you're not the angry fan like I am, where I hold it up. Like when Spider-Man came out in
it's like
2000.
I have my movies, and especially like with comics, I'm a big comic nerd, and it's like, yeah, it's like you would want to see things kind of stick to it, but everybody has their own thing where they're going in and they think they're going to do it better, and they're going to do it their way because they had some sort of vision. Everybody wants to make their mark somehow, and as stupid as it could be because they mess it up a lot, it's like, well, you know what, I watched a movie, it wasn't terrible, it's like I enjoyed it, maybe I'll watch it again someday, but
Well,
I'm not going to sit there and feel like I waste my time or anything.
Well, like Spider-Man in 2002, I was that guy. I went in there to watch it, and a big thing for me with Spider-Man was his web shooters, because in the older comics, his web shooters always were a part of the fight where he would run out of web fluid or they would jam up.
Right.
And when Tobey Maguire started shooting the web out of his wrist, I was that guy in the theater going, "This is bullshit. This is bullshit. He doesn't shoot the webs out of his wrist."
Beyond that, to tell the truth, that whole idea creeps me out. It's like if you say, great, you have all these superpowers, but wait a minute. I don't have like liquid shooting out of my wrists that solidifies. That's fucking creepy.
It is kind of gross. I'm gonna have to tread it. I'm
I
gonna
mean,
have
can
to
you
take
imagine?
Frank's side on that
You know, you
one.
think about like Peter
Creepy.
Parker at home. He's probably got like all these little web strands all over the place all the time.
Looks like a
You know how many
after.
times he has to do it on accident too, and it's just like the people that he accidentally. It's like, not to say it like this, but how many people he accidentally sprays it in their face, you know,
Yeah,
all
and
over
then he
their
goes,
face.
oh, I'm sorry, I got excited for a second.
It's like, because you know it happens, but they don't show it.
Yeah,
It's like, and if it comes out of his wrist, why doesn't it come out of his feet?
or his ass, where it normally comes out of his
It's like, why his wrist? Like, why can't it come out of his
because in the
feet?
original
Or,
version they were artificial web shooters and they were on his wrist.
Yeah, so Peter Parker, to those who don't know, he's basically a genius, a scientific genius. And when he got his spider powers, he created his own little web shooters. And it was always, Frank, it was always a part of his fights in the early days where he would be up against Doc Ock and he would run out of the web fluid. Why? Because he was a broke kid living in New York and he didn't have the money to buy the chemicals that he needed to make the web fluid.
so he
So that's
created a
why,
concealed web
Right. Well, I mean, you know,
weapon.
and that's why he was taking,
back when the character was interesting.
yeah. And then I'm in the theater, and all of a sudden he's like just like ejaculating this shit out of his wrist. I'm like, this sucks. This is bullshit. And I was just mad over that.
Well, please, that was like the least of the. I mean, the movie. I was amazed at how good that movie was. To be quite honest,
Willem Dafoe. If it hadn't been for him, that movie would have been trash.
Oh, I liked the movie. Sorry, I'm gonna be honest here. It's like maybe I'm just not anal. I don't know. Not that I'm calling John anal, but John's like, hey, that's not nice. But no, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Spider-Man. Not my
But like
Spider-Man.
exactly. It's like, I don't do that crap. I'm like, it is what it is. Yeah.
I have calmed down in my older age. I'm not the anal comic book nerd
No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You just sat here.
You gotta realize for anything that they adapt from one medium to another, there's always going to be changes and decisions made that people who are the fans originally are not going to agree with. And it might be, in some cases, a very good decision.
But I really wasn't the only one there in that theater that night. There was like one guy sitting next to me who was like, yeah, I know, right? It's kind of weird, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it is. He's got like these white little pussy looking things on his wrist.
Yes.
That looks like some kind of
infection.
Like,
not to like go completely off the topic, but like with the Harry Potter movies, just like a little tiny example. The fans got upset that it followed the books to the T when they first came out. So they decided to change it up, because you had these hardcore fans being like, oh no, they need to change it up because it's like, it's a movie. They figure things are supposed to be different. It's supposed to be like a different universe, basically, type of thing. So they tried that, and then what happens is everybody complains that it doesn't follow the books and it's not as good.
Yeah, with Prisoner of Azkaban, when
you're always going to have a division like that, and I think we just have to be grateful for the fact that works that people like in their original form are being given at least some respect nowadays that they would not have gotten at one time many years ago. There was a time they would have never put the time and money into making 3 Lord of the Rings movies. It just never would have happened. It was something like that, again, was looked at on a lower tier in a way.
I remember back, for those that probably don't remember, Frank probably remembers, Mandy remembers, but I remember reading about that in like old Starlog magazine when it was talking about Peter Jackson's going to take J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and make a movie series out of it. And I'm clearly sitting there going, there's no way he's going to be able to pull this off. There's no way, because I thought that technology at the time was so limited and it was going to cost so much money, because God, I mean, the universe that man created when he wrote those books, I was just like, I'm scared Peter is taking on.
The thing to realize is that CGI in movies that are CGI heavy is the biggest part of most of those budgets. I mean, I mentioned that the Avengers Endgame was like, the third biggest budgeted film of all time. But the
Mm-hmm.
top 20 or 30 movies, highest budgets ever, are all fairly recent, totally CGI laden films. That's
Yeah,
where the
like all the current Star Wars, for example. All those.
anything with lots and lots of effects, like where virtually every shot requires some kind of effects.
Well, the thing I was scared of with the Lord of the Rings was I didn't know. I knew ILM could probably pull it off, George Lucas's company, but I was afraid because he went with Weta Works or whatever they're called. But they
Mhm.
were out of New Zealand, and I had never seen anything that they had done, so I didn't know
Right.
particularly their credibility with that. But when they put out Fellowship of the Ring, I was like, okay, you got me.
Yeah. Well,
You
I mean, prior to Lord of the Rings, I had a lot of respect already for Peter Jackson. I was like really impressed with his early films. I mean, they're just bursting with creativity, I think.
Yeah, brain damage. That's like
Yeah.
gore upon gore. I mean, if you, yeah. And even the Michael J. Fox movie he did, Frighteners, I still love that movie.
Yeah, no, I think you can see that there's a directorial personality that rises above in those movies. But I think he and I sort of I like and I sort of rank Guillermo del Toro on sort of the same level, where they have this very vivid imagination. They have a great love for all these genres. They're very familiar with the work in the genres, so they have some perspective. They actually know what they're talking about, and they come to it with respect and love, and they want to, really what you want to do if you're a filmmaker is you want to equal the wonderful, perfect movie that you saw when you were 10 years old that you loved so much and it inspired you beyond all things. And so someday you're hoping you can convey that to somebody else.
Yep. What is it that Carrie said? Oh, Carrie says I watched the old black and white Vincent Price films. If you
Yes.
get a chance,
I love
watch
those
Tingler.
movies.
Watch the
Oh,
Tingler. That
I love
movie. Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that movie had a gimmick to it. I forget the guy that made it. His
William
name.
Castle.
Yeah, William Castle. He was putting like buzzers in the theater seats.
He actually, not just buzzers, he had actually like low-level electrical currents hooked up to seats. So that the Tingler, which is a monster that apparently is this parasite that lives in your spine, that only becomes solid when you scream or something. Oh no, when you're terrified, and it returns to liquid form when you scream.
Yeah.
So it eventually gets loose in the movie theater that's in the film, and they're screaming, you've got to scream, the Tingler is in the theater. And that's what the audiences did. But
Whatever happened to them days when you had those gimmicks like that? I mean, it would make the movie so
that kind
fun.
of stuff, for the most part, disappeared back in the 60s. And occasionally it would pop up, that kind of thing here and there, with like a gimmick or something that would, you could have some kind of participation with the film, like barf bags and things like this that a few movies did. But I think there was an age of showmanship before television that I think is what it was almost, where they just put everything they could into it. And especially actually in the early days of television, because they were really competing with television.
I mean, hell, you had Castle handing out life insurance policies at certain films and saying if you die of fright, we'll pay your family $1,000.
Right, but think about how much more fun that made going to those films at the time.
Yeah. 13 Ghosts, you couldn't watch that movie without those special illusions.
A friend of mine saw the William Castle film House on Haunted Hill in the 50s, and in a scene in that where there's like a skeleton that like comes down, right? They actually had a skeleton on a string, like go floating through the theater. And I said, "What was that?" He's like, "What was that like?" He said, "Well, people reached up and they tore it down, the audience."
It's probably somebody took it home and has a piece of movie history. I mean, I went on eBay the other day after watching 13 Ghosts, and there's people still selling those.
Really?
The Ghost Vision glasses, but for like big money, and I'm like, wow. I wish I had
I sort of like William Castle because he was very upfront about the fact that he was like sort of giving you a bullshit sales pitch to some extent. And he made films. His films were designed more to be fun than anything else. I mean, they had the horror elements, but some of them were were pretty like, family or kid friendly, and I think there was that desire to like mingle things enough so that you could like scare people and give them a good laugh and give them a fun time.
And I think that's what you're doing, Frank, with your films, like Street Trash and Spookies, the same
It's
thing.
still how I sort of look at things. I mean, I think you know, I think if you entertain people, everything else will sort of follow. It's like they don't even have to think the film is great, but if they're thoroughly entertained, they will have a feeling about the film that maybe a better film that doesn't entertain them will not give them.
Because, like I said, you had a 20-year-old in here the other day, my son, rolling on the floor laughing at Spookies and just did not take his eyes off the screen. So, if you had that kind of impact on somebody that wasn't even alive when this movie first came out,
Mm-hmm.
there's something there.
I know it's just like I said, it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around, just because Spookies was basically almost a lost film for a good number of years. Nobody heard of it. Even the horror fans who might have heard of it didn't know how to see it. But all these things come back somehow.
Morgan wants to know if you're going to crowdfund.
That has been suggested to me, and I'm actually going to. I want to take it to a few production and distribution companies before I even think about that. I would like, partially because it's an extremely ambitious project, and it's probably more than could be easily raised with a crowdfunding situation. But I'm gonna be launching into that within the months to come. But at the same time, I've got like a couple of other projects that are more low budget, that are just something simple that could be done without having to go into major money expenditures, which I would consider doing on a crowdfunding basis. I don't think, for me at my age, in terms of what I'd like to do with my career, I don't want to just go out and randomly just do anything for the sake of doing it. I want to do something that has some meaning. So I have a couple of projects that I have in mind, and I may actually start putting something together and make a small film before I get a Spookies follow-up together. But I feel great, because I feel I've been very active. I've got people constantly asking, when is this going to be ready? What are you planning to do? And that's great. There's nothing better than to be a filmmaker and people are asking you, when can I see your next film?
Yeah. I don't know what that's like, but I can imagine it's
no. Because like back when before Spookies regained a reputation, it was like it was nothing. To say I made it was meaningless.
And now all of a sudden it gets showed on Shudder, and there's this resurgence of what is this? What is this?
Well, I mean, the good thing about Shudder and especially Joe Bob Briggs, is simply that probably exposed Spookies and Street Trash to more people than any other single distribution form.
Yeah, like the night that he showed Chud, he showed that on there. And I remember Twitter, because when I watch his last drive-in, I go on Twitter too and interact with what they call the hashtag mutant fam.
Right.
And there was so many people on there going, I'd never known of Chud. I've never heard of this movie, never seen it before.
Chud actually got quite a lot of distribution back in the 80s. It was pretty found. It's not like it was not distributed widely.
But it blew me away that not many people had seen
it. Just I think it was either just before or after we shot Street Trash, and I don't remember which. I went to the studio where they were shooting all the sewer scenes for Chud. So I hung out in that set of with the brick walls and stuff like that and everything. And I was amazed at the time how fake it fucking looked. Well, because I saw it, and from a distance it looked pretty good. And then I got up close, and I was like, "Wow, is this going to pass on film? It looks fine in the film."
The illusions of filmmaking.
Exactly.
If anybody wants to get Spookies, the original, where could they go and find it? Because I know Amazon doesn't really have it, the Blu-ray of it.
They should have it. Did you just check recently? They may have sold out again.
Yeah, they could have sold out, because I tried to get it.
The Blu-ray, which is there's a single disc edition, which is just the movie, and then there's the double disc, which is the film, and then it's got two lengthy documentaries about the making of the film and things related. There are a lot of reviews out there online, and the whole package has been really positively reviewed for quite a while. We won the Rondo Award, the horror Excellence Award. We won that for best video. What was it? Best DVD extra.
Never mind, I stand corrected. It is on Amazon. I just didn't pay attention.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's sometimes hard for me to keep track because sometimes companies buy rights for something and it's just a few months and you don't always know when it's beginning and ending.
And guys, you can go on Amazon right now and get it on sale.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like the film was so hard to find at one point, and now you pretty much can go anywhere and get it.
Yeah, I pulled it up on Walmart.
Yeah.
So
$35, normally $35, and you can get it for $25.
Walmart
and that's the
$26.99.
And I just bought it. I collect movies. It's my Achilles heel.
Wait, did you seriously just buy it?
Yes.
You should make sure you get the 2-disc edition. You really need to sit down.
Mandy's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. I collect movies. I have like VHS tapes.
Did you get the correct one, John? Frank was saying to make sure you got the correct one.
People have really been very appreciative of the documentary and hearing the story behind the making and the difficulties we went through. I can't tell you how much sympathy and people who were amazed by what we went through to get the film made. In fact, it's been brought up on a few occasions, and it may be one of the next things I work on. But we've talked about doing a film based on the making of Spookies, which would be sort of a black comedy, I guess.
Spookies Blu-ray. Yeah, I'm guessing I did because
he's still trying to check to see what he just bought.
Just make sure because they have 2 editions.
That impulse buy.
No, it wasn't the impulse buy. I bought the European format because I like the cover on it better. It's the actual movie poster that's on there. And I like the little thing that the Europeans put on there with the age of the little circle that says 15 or whatever age. Yeah.
That must be the British version.
Yeah. Luckily, I have a Blu-ray player that'll play that because I have bought them in the past and I got them and I didn't realize they were region locked and I tried to play them and it wouldn't play. It's like unable to.
I'll tell you, I don't even know why they bother with that kind of stuff anymore.
I don't know either. It was actually a Universal Monsters set that I bought, and I got it because it was actually cheaper if I got the actual. It was from the British version, and I got it here, and I put in the Mummy and went to watch it, and it says unable to read disc. I was like, motherfucker! I got to buy a new Blu-ray player now. So actually, I didn't save money; I spent more money.
Yeah. Well,
because I knew they did that for video games and stuff, like region locked them, but I didn't think that they did that.
To tell the truth, there's still too many video formats around there. There should only be like one 4K video format commercially, but there are like 4 of them. So I don't know what the hell the purpose of that really is.
Well, Mandy, I want to see it in its cleaned up format. Because when I watched it, it was a bad transfer on YouTube.
And in this print, you can see the puppeteer behind one of the puppets in one shot.
Oh yeah, the 2-disc version looks super nice, but you can only buy it used right now for $40.
Oh.
So
if I were you, I would shop around a little, just because I think that you really would appreciate the documentary quite a bit.
Does the distributor Vinegar, do they have it?
Probably get it from them directly, yeah. I mean, I have no idea what their current price is. Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand the way a lot of video distributors work nowadays. It's like their films, they seem to release a certain number of copies, and then that's it for a while, and then like a number of years later they'll come out with more copies.
Yep, Vinegar Syndrome. No, it's actually cheaper if you buy it directly from them. The 2-disc anyway.
Right.
Okay. I will return my Amazon purchase and get it from Vinegar Syndrome.
That's good.
Because it says region-free 2-disc Blu-ray set. Twisted Tales,
I'm looking at it.
the unmaking of Spookies, the VIP Code, the untold story, which I'm guessing is the guy that's in the nursing home.
Yeah. And the unmaking of Spookies, the one about the actual making of the film, originally was supposed to be like a 45-minute documentary, and then the guys who did all the extras for the Blu-ray realized that the backstory was just really ridiculously wild and unusual and full of lots of interesting details. So they wound up with like an hour and 40-minute feature film.
Damn, Vinegar Syndrome even has an app for your phone. Has a very the silhouette of what I guess is a porn star though for the
Probably.
app.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's how they got started, was like taking those old porn movies from.
They distribute all kinds of stuff. It's just it's more about the time period that the film is from than even the kind of film that it is. And I personally don't. I mean, I have an interest in almost all like older film footage just because of the look and the period, and there's all kinds of interesting things there to me. But I've never quite understood the huge appeal there seems to be in like these 70s porn movies, which are for the most part like awful in terms of anything that counts.
Oh my God, they even got Dead Heat. A lot of people probably don't remember that. Dead Heat.
That's the Tree Williams movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Madman.
Are you still shopping?
No, I'm just looking at what they have because I just downloaded their app.
Guys, I'm gonna have to cut out here very shortly, so we should.
Okay. Sorry, I got caught up on that app because I see all these movies that I used to see on video store shelves. It's like, wow, I remember this one. I remember that one. Well, Frank, it has been a true honor and a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I enjoyed it. I always appreciate it when people have something to say and questions to ask, because there are times where I just find myself staring at the person interviewing me who doesn't have anything left. So I have
I meant that was a question I was going to ask, but I didn't know. Like, have you ever done an interview where the guy's just sitting there just staring at you like the Chris Farley skit on the Saturday Night Live where he was
something like that? Seriously, because everybody thinks they can be a media personality nowadays with YouTube, etc. And many of these people don't have that ability at all. They don't have the ability to conduct an interesting interview or even a conversation. And it's on a few. I try and avoid it, and I try and get a sense of like what type of a podcast or whatever they do. But I've found myself on a few occasions with people that I just had to start shoveling information in and they really just came off horribly. So I think I saved them some embarrassment. But I also have to be more discriminating in who I accept interviews with, I think.
I try to pride myself on it. No matter who I have on, I try to treat all my guests as people first, and not just sit there and like fanboy out over it and all that, because you probably deal with enough of that shit already. And I just want to be like, basically like two friends just having a conversation about the other.
That's exactly how we've been talking, and that's what works for me. I want, what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't want to have to be somebody, I'm not, you keep calling me, by the way, in your messages, sir. You just call me Frank. Sir is a barrier in between you and me in terms of getting to know you.
Well, I'm Southern, and that was the way I was taught to do.
That's true. I understand that. Okay.
I got them old.
Call him Frank, John. God.
I have been. I've been calling him Frank because he told me to stop calling him sir. Earlier when we started.
The next thing he's going to do is he's going to start being like, Sir Frank.
I guess maybe I'm just so used to being treated with no respect. Is when I get some respect, it's like, wait a minute, what is this?
Oh my God.
Like Rodney Dangerfield.
Like, what do I do with this?
No respect at all.
But anyway, I enjoyed myself, and I'm happy to do it with you again sometime. And
yeah, the door is always open.
In the near future, I hope to have more stuff to be able to tell you.
All right. Well, Mandee,
absolutely
nothing else?
No, You
Okay.
guys had covered a lot of everything before I got on, so that's why I was just kind of like,
Thank you for still showing up.
But I didn't
Well,
want to miss
Frank,
an opportunity to meet you, Frank. So thank you.
It's very nice to meet you, Mandee, John. I want to thank you. I had a fine time.
well, the door is always open, Frank. You can come back on anytime. Just let me know.
Okay.
And if there's somebody in your way, I'll just kick them out the way and say, "Hey, Frank's coming on."
All right. Well, terrific. Fantastic. Wonderful.
All right, my friend.
Yeah. I just have to get used to my own celebrity.
Well, best of luck to you getting
honor,
Spookies
Frank.
2 made. And yeah, Mandee just said it. It was an honor and a pleasure because I grew up watching your movies. I mean, mainly street trash, but not too many times I got to see a movie where a guy got his willy cut off.
Just wait until my next movie.
All right. All right.
Guys, you take care, and I'll talk to you again
too.
very soon. Good night,
Mr.
now.
Frank Farel, everybody. Bye, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Such an awesome, awesome person. It's like talking to somebody that you've known your entire life.
Microphone.
Woo. Gotten hot today.
Are you okay there, John? You look like you're sweating.
The cheeks are a little shiny. Yeah, it's hot today, and we don't have air conditionings in our house. We get cooled by God.
Really? There's no AC in Hawaii?
Not really. Unless you buy it and put it in yourself. Because we normally have a very temperate environment where it's normally not like super extremely hot. It's normally it's normally.
How can it not be hot? You live inside of a volcano.
I don't. That's on Big Island. I don't have active volcanoes on my island.
How do you know you're living inside of one?
Because the last time Diamond Head erupted was before man could even walk on the earth.
Of it. It was you're right inside of it.
Yeah, it's
down deep inside of it. You're like, shut up, Mandee.
Get down in the guts of it. Dirty.
I just think that islands that were on top of lava would be kind of hot. But maybe that's just me.
And it's funny because the Big Island where the volcanoes are, they actually get snow in the wintertime. Yeah. What did Matt say? It's -6.
Where's Matt at?
He lives in Ottawa, Canada, Ontario province. Beautiful city.
Yeah, I'm in Florida. It's always gross here. Always gross. Gross. That's all I can say about it. It's uncomfortable. Everybody thinks it's all nice and it's a huge vacation spot, but
yeah, they've never seen the swamps. The miles and miles of swamps and mosquitoes and poisonous snakes.
When they never wrestle with the gator or hurricane.
I miss having fried gator tail though. That's good.
Ew. You
ain't never tried it?
I've tried it and it's ew. It's ew.
Well, whoever oohed it didn't know how to cook it.
No, it's like there's been a few people, and that's what everybody says. Oh, you just haven't had it where it's prepared correctly. I'll taste the effing same, and it's all gross.
You ever have frog legs?
No, that's even more disgusting.
I haven't either. I'm not eating no damn frog.
Touch that.
Unless I'm starving to death, then I might think about it. Might be consideration.
I always thought it was fun to dissect them, but I'm not going to eat them. I'm really sick. It's like just like with people, they're fun to dissect, but they're not fun to eat. But I know there's some people out there will beg to differ.
If there's still anybody watching this Vinegar Syndrome app, they've got all kinds of goody goods.
You're still shopping.
I'm not shopping. I'm looking. I mean, there's shit on here.
Shopping.
Well, that doesn't mean I'm spending money.
Right now, you're doing the internet equivalent of window shopping, so that way you can go back and buy what you just saw that really caught your eye.
I used to have the poster for this movie, The Cellar, which I'm pretty sure nobody can see it. Yeah, I doubt, but I used to have that movie poster hanging up in my room when I was a kid because I always used to go and raid the video stores of all the posters that they were throwing out. And then I'd bring them
So,
home.
was having Frank on the show everything that you were hoping for, expecting?
Mm-hmm.
Did
Yep,
it warm your heart inside?
yeah, because I got to meet somebody that I grew up watching.
Were your palms sweaty?
I watched him get his dick cut
Daddy
off when I
Frank.
was a kid. I literally watched him get his dick cut off when I was a kid. He was the
How
one in
many?
street. He was the one in
How,
street trash that stuck
okay.
his ding ding through the hole
Yes,
and got.
I know this. How many times you have to frickin' say it? Oh my
Well,
god.
I've got to remind you
You don't have to remind me. You're reminding everybody like 20 million times. You're like fascinated with it.
because it was an awesome scene. He should have got an Academy Award for that.
For getting his dick chopped off. Okay, just
Wow, you all cook gator up in Canada? Holy shit!
no.
Where in the world did you get gator from in Canada?
Where did you get gator from in Canada? I'm picturing alligators wearing like jackets and little hats with mittens.
He put the ding ding through the hole. Yeah, he did. Damn, now I'm gonna have to make a bumper sticker. He put the ding ding through the hole. Put it right next to my trailer shaker. Hashtag trailer shaker.
There's a lot more other like memorable things though in the movie besides that part that you keep mentioning.
Yeah, the guy that melted into the toilet, the fat guy that exploded,
I like the guy melting into the toilet. That was like really, really cool.
The other
really
guy
cool.
that melted in front of his kitty cat, and then his drippings dropped on that one guy's face, and his face melted off.
That was cool.
The guy that got decapitated by the welding tank when the guy knocked the end off of it and it flew into his face.
But yeah, Frank is right though. So many people are offended by that, like today. It's like it's just so weird. But that's like with so many movies. You go back and you rewatch everything from the 80s and stuff like that, and you'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe my parents let me watch this.
But sometimes people just need to get over the fact that this was a movie made 40 years ago. And it was a product of its time. And for that time, movies back then, a lot of these horror directors went on shock value alone. And that was what they were going for because shock value sold tickets. Same with if you went back and say you went to an Alice Cooper show in the 70s and the early 80s, you were going to see a woman get decapitated, another person crucified, all kinds of stuff because Alice Cooper was all about the stage theatrics. That's how he made a name for himself in the rock game. Same with Kiss. It was all about theatrics and shock value. Gene Simmons spitting blood out on stage and all that crap. So just get over it, guys. It was what it was. You can't do anything about it. What do you want them, Frank and them, to do? Just completely cancel it from existence? Probably.
Yeah, because it's cancel culture. That's the whole thing. They want everything gone.
Well, so sometimes you want one.
They're the ones that would rewrite the history books, and they're going to say that they invented Cookie Monster.
Basically saying that they exploited homeless people.
That's what they're saying over and over again. And then they're saying, like I said, it's like they said that the movie had no real story to it and that all they were doing is making fun of homeless people and exploiting them just for entertainment.
Well, listen here, Karen. There was that movie, and that story was it was a day in the life of homeless people, and it was the most fucked up day that they could possibly imagine. They were all drinking liquor, which, let's be real, most homeless people are consumers of alcohol.
Oh, the other thing that they were saying is that it was only made because they're trying to say that nobody cares about homeless people.
Oh, God. eat me.
It's making me mad. It's like, "Arr."
No, because I get tired of everybody just getting offended over the littlest shit. Like, we've got I don't know. I'm going to leave my political rants for my presidential run one day. You want to be my running mate? No? Oh, fuck. I'm sure Luke will.
Luke can be vice president. No, Luke can be the first lady. I'm saying it here, everybody.
That's a little creepy.
Luke's gonna be the first lady.
That's going to be creepy.
I'll be vice president. I'll be vice president, and he gets to be the first lady.
Secretary of State. Mandee Cantone, Vice President Luke.
No, not Vice President Luke. It's Vice President Mandee.
Oh, I thought you were like, fuck it, I ain't doing that.
No, it's Vice President Mandee and then First Lady Luke.
Okay. Then
you're like, he's not gonna like this.
He just wants to come to the party. That's all Luke cares about, to be truthfully honest. He wants an invite to the party.
See? I can see it. It'd be good. I can't promise that we won't make things a million times worse, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if I can send him on diplomatic missions. It might escalate something. Unfortunately.
Oh my God, you'd be the president doing the podcast.
Yeah. Straight from Waipahu, Hawaii. The president of the United States. And then the presidential seal comes up, and then I'm sitting in my little Harry Potter closet home. My fellow Americans. Hey, you can get a Spookies t-shirt on this website too. They have small, medium, large, extra large, 2XL, and fat ass. And I normally wear 2XL fat ass. Because I'm thick. Like a McDonald's milkshake. Oh, my booty hurts.
I'm not going to ask why.
Not that. I've been sitting in this uncomfortable office chair for 2.5 hours. No, actually 3, because I started setting up 30 minutes prior to.
Yeah, you kind of are a pain in the ass, John.
Yeah, I know it. Like a big old hemorrhoid.
Morgan says he's a fat ass too.
Fat ass brothers unite. We should start a club. Fatty Fun Club.
What time is it there, John?
6 o'clock.
See, it's 11 o'clock here.
Getting about time for John to go eat. I haven't eaten all day. Been cleaning. Bought a brand new record player last night because I wanted to start listening to records again. And Deidre having that big record collection back there, I was like, damn. I had money left over from my Christmas bonus, and I went and got me a record player. It wasn't expensive.
You're like, my collection's weak.
No, I only got 2 records out of it, but one of the records I got to take back because how in the hell you sell a record and it's already scratched? Like brand new. I was sitting there listening to it, and all of a sudden, internet.
Are you sure you didn't scratch it when you took it out?
No. Because I grew, because I handled it with care. Set it on there nice and easy. And I took the little thing, and I made sure it went onto the record nice and easy, the little needle.
Are you sure?
It's not new technology.
See, like, club hands, like, grabbing it, going like, Oh, record play now.
No, I didn't caveman the shit out of it. I just set it on there, and next thing I know, it's skipping like a mofo.
You're like, I'm gentle and polite.
No, I was sitting
You're
there
like,
listening to it while I was in the shower, and then when I got out of the shower, I was going, and I was like, this is bullshit. How do I
Maybe your
buy it?
cat scratched it while you were in the shower.
No, she wouldn't get near it. She's scared of it. I just
She's
took it out
like,
the box in the morning.
a ghost did it.
It's like, this is bullshit, bro. Brand new fucking record.
Where'd you get it from?
Walmart. That probably explains why it's scratched.
Walmart.
Yeah, probably
Who
some
buys
Billy.
music from Walmart, though?
Probably some Billy in there playing soccer with it.
I didn't know people bought music from Walmart still.
Well, my Walmart here has a pretty good vinyl selection in there.
Is it censored?
I don't know if you could censor vinyl. Maybe.
No. You would do it before you put the recordings on.
Shit.
Because I know, like, years ago, it's like they only sold they would only sell the censored music at Walmart.
Yeah, it was a little upsetting that my record was scratched.
You can't take it back either, can you? Do they have that rule there still?
No, I'm taking it back.
Once music is open, you cannot bring it back, but it's a record.
You're like, look, motherfuckers, I bought this thing that's scratched, so somebody's going to give me a...
They'll just exchange it. No. Okay, so they stopped with the censoring of the music at Walmart. Because that was like a common question. Are the vinyls at Walmart censored?
A lot of these vinyls are expensive, especially on Amazon.
Talking nonsense. Nonsense.
Yeah, it was just a little upsetting that I bought this brand new record and it was already got something wrong with it for it to start skipping like that. I don't know.
We went from Frank Farel to skipping records from Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart. Quality and value every day. Hey, Walmart, sponsor us. We need some money. I'll sling your...
Like, don't put our name in your show anymore.
I'll sling your secondhand trash. Selling skipped records, broken bullshit, but at a great price.
But
well, guys, I don't have anything else to add to this. Do you, Mandee?
no, I just had a message that says you need Frank Henenlotter next.
Yeah, he's the director of Basket Case.
Mm-hmm.
Basket Case and Frankenhooker.
Yay.
I would love Frank Henenlotter. Does anybody have a contact for him?
I don't know. Let me see if this person does.
Don't come at me with something and
it's
don't
like
tell me.
They're telling me like you need to get him. It's like, well, it's like,
well, I kind of need some contact.
like, because you know.
Yeah, I would love to have Frank Henenlotter.
Okay. They said no, but they're sure they can find one. So how about that?
Well, if you can find one, I might have something for you. Just let Mandee know.
Don't say a dick pic. Nobody wants a dick pic.
No.
Are you gonna send a toy if they get somebody? Are you gonna send
Yeah.
a toy?
What kind of toy?
You're like, I don't want to part with my collection.
I mean, there is a one of those special toy stores across the street over here in my neighborhood. Wink.
Okay. Yeah, and once you said special, I kind of got what you meant.
Okay. Just
So
making
he's
sure you
telling
can track.
everybody the store that he shops at all the time for his special toys.
Hey,
He likes the one shaped like a fist.
and guess what? When I'm done, I just throw it in the closet. I ain't got to hear no nagging. I ain't got to buy no dinner. I ain't got to go shopping.
So gross. So gross. Yeah, he's talking about sex dolls.
No, that requires me having
Just in case somebody didn't catch that one, he's talking about him
No,
buying
that requires
sex
me having
dolls.
the.
Oh, you're gonna be that weird guy that takes his doll to like the friggin' like K Jewelers or something, and you're gonna be picking out engagement rings, and they're gonna make a commercial about you.
Best wife ever.
Or like Jared's. They'll make you a Jared's commercial about you. He went to Jared's.
And then all of a sudden,
doll's gonna have the ring on.
yeah, and then all of a sudden at the end of the commercial, the plug comes out of her ass and she flies out. Jared's, your place for jewelry. And then she flies off.
I was thinking of the silicone sex dolls, the ones that look real.
Ain't got that kind of money. That's expensive. I can get one of them coffee table booties. It's just an ass that you sit on the table. Look, we're going to keep talking about this, and YouTube's going to make me take this video down, so we need to stop.
I wasn't going there with it. I didn't want to know about your collection. It's okay, folks. I'm scarred too. All right. Let's say goodnight, John.
It's like I seen mommy and daddy naked.
Corey Feldman.
Greatest actor who ever lived. Total dickhead, though. But anyway, I guess we're out of here. So, John, the beautiful Mandee Cantone, we'll see you again next time on Behind the Fiends. Woo!